All right, settle in with your meticulously crafted kale smoothie, your artisanal avocado toast, and your ethically sourced, gluten-free, organic, non-GMO, free-range, grass-fed, locally harvested, hand-massaged sourdough bread. You, who probably frets over the exact shade of green in your microgreens and demands to know the life story of the chicken that laid your eggs, you think you've seen it all? You think your palate is sophisticated? Bless your little, wonderfully sheltered heart. Because, my friend, what you're about to embark on is a journey so profoundly disturbing, so utterly devoid of culinary common sense, it will make your carefully curated diet look like the gastronomical equivalent of a beige wall. This isn't your grandma's dusty old cookbook. Unless your grandma was a necromancer with a penchant for fermented entrails and a deep, abiding hatred for anything that tasted vaguely pleasant. No, what we're diving into today is the historical equivalent of a gastronomic horror show, a culinary cabaret where the main act involves things that would make a dumpster blush, a sanitation engineer weep, and a health inspector spontaneously combust into a puff of pure, unadulterated, existential dread. We're talking about meals that defy explanation, dishes that scoff at the very concept of appetizing, and ingredients that would send a modern-day influencer into a full-blown existential crisis on YouTube. This is where humanity's hunger met its most bizarre and often horrifying manifestations. Our goal here isn't just to gross you out, though, let's be honest, that's a delightful side effect. No, the real aim is to peel back the layers of fermented fish guts and mummified human flesh to understand the why. Why did people, throughout history, willingly, or sometimes unwillingly, put these abominations into their mouths? Was it pure, unadulterated survival, the kind of gnawing desperation that turns a leather boot into a gourmet meal? Was it status, a twisted display of wealth and power so extreme it would make a billionaire's gold leaf steak look like a discount fast food burger? Was it superstition, a belief in ancient magic or medicinal properties that promised immortality but often delivered only excruciating pain and a rapid exit from this mortal coil? Or, and let's not discount this, was it just sheer, monumental, face-palming stupidity? We're going to explore these motivations, all while trying our absolute best not to gag into our perfectly normal, non-fermented coffee. So, buckle up, you intrepid explorers of the gastronomical grotesque. Prepare your mental emesis bags. This journey promises to be a riotous blend of funny, dark, and searingly sarcastic. We're going to laugh at the absurdity, wince at the discomfort, and perhaps, just perhaps, gain a profound, if unsettling, appreciation for the mundane deliciousness of a modern chicken nugget. We're not just chronicling history, we're experiencing it, warts and all, often literally. What's on the menu, you ask? Oh, just a few little morsels to whet your whatever that is. We'll be traversing the globe and the centuries, from ancient Rome's opulent atrocities, think flamingo tongues and dormice, to medieval medicine cabinets stocked with powdered human remains. We'll delve into the darkest corners of famine, where hunger turned loved ones into lunch, and maritime disasters where the ultimate taboo was broken. We'll discover the pungent glory of fermented fish guts, the squirming horror of live octopus, and the truly mind-boggling logic behind eating cheese crawling with maggots. And just when you think you've had enough, we'll fast forward to the fringes of modernity, where wellness trends meet placenta smoothies and lab-grown meat promises a future that's both efficient and existentially unsettling. So, loosen your tie, or your corset, or whatever restrictive garment you're wearing. You're about to get a taste of history that no amount of mouthwash will ever truly scrub away. Before you had the luxury of deciding between the almond milk latte or the oat milk cappuccino, before the very concept of a menu even existed, there was simply hunger. A primal, relentless beast that drove our ancestors to shove just about anything into their mouths, often with results that were, shall we say, less than ideal. You think organic is a new trend? Darling, back then, organic just meant whatever didn't kill you instantly upon ingestion. It was a trial and error approach to dining, and let me tell you, there were a lot of errors. Imagine a foraging expedition where every berry, every root, every squiggling thing under a rock came with a 50-50 chance of either sustenance or a spectacularly painful, gut-wrenching demise. This wasn't a culinary adventure. It was a daily game of Russian roulette played with your esophagus. Pre-agriculture, life was a perpetual scavenger hunt. There were no neatly tilled fields, no domesticated livestock patiently waiting to become dinner. There was just the untamed wilderness, brimming with both potential calories and terrifying predators. Our ancestors, bless their brave, desperate souls, were the ultimate opportunistic eaters. If it moved, they chased it. If it didn't move, they probably poked it with a stick. If it was already dead, they cautiously sniffed it, weighed the risks of putrefaction against the agony of starvation, and then probably ate it anyway. The human body, it turns out, is remarkably adaptable when faced with the alternative of, not existing. It's a stark reminder that your sophisticated palate is a luxury, a pampered byproduct of millennia of successful, if gross, survival. This period marked the true dawn of omnivory, not as a dietary choice, but as a dire necessity. Early humans weren't thinking about balanced nutrition. They were thinking about any nutrition. You had to eat plants if there was no meat, and you had to eat meat if there were no plants. And if there was nothing, well, you started looking at your shoes or your tribal leader with a distinctly hungry glint in your eye. Necessity, as they say, is the mother of invention, and when it came to food, it was often the mother of truly disgusting invention. This wasn't about making food palatable. It was about making it digestible enough to squeeze out a few more precious calories and survive another day to fight off a saber-toothed tiger or invent fire or whatever it was they did. And how do we know all this? Well, my dear armchair anthropologist, we have the ancient equivalent of a meticulously documented food diary, coprolites. Yes, you heard that right. Ancient poop. Don't wrinkle your nose. This stuff is gold for scientists. These fossilized feces offer an unparalleled, if somewhat unpleasant, peek into the dietary habits of our long-gone ancestors. You can literally see what they ate, or, more accurately, what they failed to digest. And spoiler alert, it's not pretty. Imagine sifting through archaeological digs, meticulously examining ancient turds for bits of undigested bone, insect exoskeletons, plant fibers, and who knows what other horrors. It's a job only for the truly dedicated, or perhaps the truly desensitized. But these ancient leavings tell a vivid story of diets far removed from your modern gastronomic sensitivities, a tale of gritty, often raw, and almost certainly pathogen-laden meals. One consistent theme emerges from these primordial dining experiences: the relentless pursuit of every last calorie. Our ancestors were the original proponents of the nose-to-tail philosophy, long before it became a trendy buzzword in Michelin-starred restaurants. They didn't just eat the prime cuts, they ate everything. And I mean everything. One particularly crucial source of sustenance was bone marrow. After bringing down a large animal, or more likely, scavenging a carcass left by a more efficient predator, they would systematically crack open every single bone, no matter how small or inconvenient, to extract that precious fatty marrow. It was a dense, highly caloric prize, a true survival superfood. Imagine the sheer effort involved. Smashing bones with crude tools, carefully scraping out the goo inside, all while keeping an eye out for other hungry scavengers. It's a testament to the fact that when you're facing starvation, even the most unappetizing process becomes a vital ritual. And let's not forget the original protein bar: insects and grubs. Before packaging and clever marketing made them into sustainable protein alternatives, these wriggly little morsels were simply a readily available source of vital nutrients. You didn't need to farm them, they were just there, under rocks, in rotting logs, crawling on plants. A quick pick, a crunch, and voila, instant protein, fats, and minerals. Sure, the texture might have been a bit squishy, and the flavor profile probably varied wildly depending on the species and what it had been munching on. But when your stomach is growling louder than a hungry bear, you tend to overlook minor textural issues. Modern-day chefs might artfully present toasted crickets with a sprinkle of lime, but for early humans, it was just another day at the buffet of the wild. A buffet where everything looked suspiciously similar and tasted vaguely earthy. It highlights a fundamental truth. If it's nutritious and relatively easy to catch, humanity will find a way to eat it, even if it requires a strong stomach and a profound denial of the ick factor. Now, let's descend further into the abyss of human dietary desperation, to a practice so fundamental, so utterly primal, it makes eating a raw insect seem like a Michelin star experience. We're talking about geophagy, the intentional consumption of earth, clay, or soil. Yes, you heard that right. Dirt. The stuff you track in on your shoes, the very ground you walk upon, has, for millennia, been considered a viable, if grim, food source. And before you scoff and dismiss it as some outlandish historical anomaly, let me assure you, it's far more common and persistent than you could possibly imagine. It's a practice woven into the very fabric of human history, a testament to the lengths we will go when pushed to the absolute edge. This isn't about gourmands, it's about survival, a raw, unflinching look at humanity's most fundamental cravings. Why bother? You might ask, gazing in bewildered horror at the thought of a spoonful of topsoil. Well, dear skeptic, the reasons are as varied as the soils themselves, and almost all of them stem from a place of profound suffering. Primarily, geophagy is linked to mineral deficiencies. When your body is screaming for iron, zinc, or calcium, and your diet is so bereft of nutrients it makes a cardboard box look like a balanced meal, your brain starts sending out some rather unconventional signals. Certain clays, it turns out, can contain these vital minerals, offering a desperate, last-ditch attempt to replenish what's missing. It's not efficient, it's not particularly nutritious in bulk, but when your bones ache and your blood is thin, even a mouthful of earth might offer a flicker of hope. Think of it as the original, unflavored, extremely gritty mineral supplement, taken directly from the source with no fancy packaging or marketing whatsoever. But mineral deficiency isn't the only driver. Famine, that grim reaper of human history, has pushed countless populations to embrace the earth as their last resort. When crops fail, when granaries are empty, when even rats have packed their bags and left town, the ground beneath your feet can seem like the only viable option. Eating clay can also help alleviate the pangs of hunger, filling an empty stomach, even if it offers little caloric value. It's a cruel trick of the body, a stopgap measure that speaks volumes about the utter despair of those who practice it. Imagine the hollow ache in your gut, the dizzying weakness, and then the slow, chalky sensation of biting into soil, hoping against hope that it will quell the beast within. It's a deeply uncomfortable mental image, isn't it? Historically, examples of geophagy are shockingly widespread. The ancient Greeks and Romans documented the practice, often noting specific clays from islands like Lemnos as having medicinal properties, consumed by people who were, perhaps, not just looking for a cure-all, but for anything to stave off hunger or deficiency. In various African tribes, certain clays were consumed, not just for hunger, but sometimes for ceremonial purposes or even for pleasure, a taste that had become deeply embedded in cultural practice. Indigenous Americans also engaged in geophagy, often for similar reasons, of mineral supplementation or as part of traditional medicine. It wasn't a secret, shameful act. For many, it was a recognized, if unfortunate, part of life, a testament to the sheer resilience and adaptability of human beings in the face of scarcity. So, what does dirt actually taste like? Well, dear friend, unless you're planning on conducting your own empirical research, which I strongly advise against, unless you fancy a trip to the emergency room for intestinal blockage or parasitic worms, we can only speculate with morbid fascination. Our sarcastic narrator would venture a guess. Earthy, obviously, gritty, certainly, with a faint hint of regret, despair, and perhaps the lingering aftertaste of an ancient ancestor's foot. You might imagine it as a chalky, muddy paste, something that grinds between your teeth, dries out your mouth, and offers a fleeting sense of fullness, followed by a dull, persistent ache in your digestive tract. It's not the rich, umami depth of good soil. It's the taste of pure, unadulterated desperation, a flavor profile entirely unique to the edge of human endurance. Perhaps it sounds like a gritty, muted scraping sound. Or maybe like disappointment. Modern echoes of geophagy persist, most notably in the phenomenon of pica, particularly in pregnancy. Pregnant women, often experiencing severe iron deficiencies, occasionally develop an intense craving for non-food items, including dirt, clay, or laundry starch. It's a subconscious, physiological cry for help from a body under immense strain. Beyond the medical realm, you'll still find specific clays being sold in markets in certain parts of the world, consumed by people who either cling to ancient traditions or who are simply too poor to access adequate nutrition. So the next time you hear a news report about some exotic, bizarre eating habit, remember that sometimes the strangest meals are not about indulgence or novelty, but about the raw, uncompromising struggle for survival. A struggle that, even in our modern world, is never truly far away. It reminds us that your well-stocked pantry is a privilege, not a given. And thank goodness for that. The romance of the sea. The boundless horizons, the salty spray, the rhythmic creak of the timbers, the freedom of the open ocean. It's all very poetic, isn't it? Until, that is, the food runs out, the fresh water dwindles to a putrid dribble, and you're hundreds, perhaps thousands of miles from anything remotely resembling land. Then, my friend, the romance dies a swift, brutal death, replaced by a gnawing, existential dread that makes all those charming nautical metaphors suddenly seem rather ironic. The sea, in its vast, indifferent majesty, has a way of stripping humanity down to its most primal, terrifying core, revealing truths about survival that most of us would rather keep buried deep within our sanitized psyches. When the pantry is just the endless, empty ocean and your only companions are slowly starving, well, that's when things get truly, irrevocably dark. Enter the chilling saga of the Essex whale ship, a tale so horrifying it inspired Herman Melville's Moby Dick, though even Melville couldn't bring himself to fully depict the grim reality. Imagine a massive sperm whale, not merely wounded, but actively attacking and sinking your ship, leaving 20 men stranded in 3 tiny whaling boats, 1,000 miles from the nearest land. The initial rations dwindle, then vanish. They eat what they can, a few remaining hardtacks, some sea turtles caught in the early days. But the ocean is vast and unyielding. Months pass. The sun scorches, the storms rage, and men begin to die, one by one. And that, my friends, is when the ultimate taboo is broken. When one of their number finally succumbs, the others, driven by a hunger that transcends all reason, all morality, all humanity, turn to his flesh for sustenance. They carefully preserve and consume their fallen shipmates, not out of malice, but out of a desperate, animalistic will to live. It is the ultimate long pig story, a chilling testament to what the human spirit, or rather the human body, will demand when faced with the absolute end. And while the Essex is a maritime horror, the same grim principle, the same stomach-churning logic played out on land with the infamous Donner Party. Imagine a group of pioneers, full of hope and naivety, taking a supposed shortcut through the Sierra Nevada mountains, only to be trapped by an early, brutal winter. Snowdrifts piled impossibly high, supplies vanishing, and then the inevitable, inexorable descent into desperation. First, their cattle, then their horses, then their dogs. And when those were gone, when the hunger became a living, screaming entity in their bellies, they began to look at their fellow travelers, the very people they had shared stories and dreams with around a campfire, as potential provisions. The frozen bodies of the dead became their ghastly larder. It's a story that curdles the blood, not just for the act itself, but for the profound psychological landscape of horror that must have preceded it. The breaking of this taboo, the consumption of another human being, carries with it a psychological toll so immense, so utterly corrosive, it's almost unimaginable. It's not just the physical act, it's the irreversible shattering of every societal norm, every ethical boundary, every scrap of shared humanity. Imagine the conversations, or more likely, the terrifying silence leading up to such a decision. The rationalizations, the justifications, the desperate attempts to cling to some shred of dignity while engaging in the most undignified act imaginable. The survivors of these events, if they survived at all, were forever haunted, not just by the memories of the dead, but by the memories of what they had done to stay alive. It's a stain on the soul that no amount of subsequent comfort or prosperity could ever truly wash away. It's a hunger that feeds on more than just flesh. This brings us to the agonizing moral gray area that defines such situations. Is it survival, a harsh but understandable instinct when faced with certain death? Or is it the ultimate descent into barbarism, a definitive step over the line that separates humanity from the beast? There are no easy answers here. It's a question that philosophers have wrestled with for centuries, a thought experiment often explored in fiction, but lived in horrifying reality by the unfortunate souls of the Essex and the donor party. When every fiber of your being screams for nourishment, when your body is wasting away before your eyes, does the concept of right and wrong still hold the same meaning? Or does it melt away like ice in the scorching sun, leaving only the raw, desperate imperative to persist? It's a dark mirror, reflecting our own deepest fears about what we might be capable of when stripped of all comfort, all civilization, and all hope. And it's a testament to the fact that sometimes the strangest meals are born not from choice, but from the brutal, uncompromising dictates of biological survival. Let's just hope you never have to make that call. All right, let's turn our gaze to a place often romanticized in the annals of American history, the early colonial settlements. You picture sturdy pioneers, brave adventurers, carving out a new destiny in a fertile land of opportunity, right? You imagine bountiful harvests, Thanksgiving feasts, and a spirit of rugged individualism. Well, let me pull back the curtain on that idyllic tableau and show you the brutal, unvarnished reality, particularly in the fledgling settlement of Jamestown. Because before the land of plenty became, well, plentiful, it was a crucible of unimaginable suffering, a place where the idealistic dream collided head-on with a nightmare of starvation so profound, it chewed away at the very foundations of human decency. It was the starving time, and it was infinitely more horrific than any historical pageant might suggest. The early days of Jamestown, particularly the winter of 1609-1610, were not a quaint chapter in history. They were a prolonged, agonizing death rattle. The colonists, a mix of ill-prepared gentlemen and laborers, arrived with grand expectations but little practical knowledge of how to survive in a hostile wilderness. They were more focused on finding gold than planting crops, more accustomed to the comforts of English society than the rigors of wilderness living. Their relationship with the native Powhatan people, initially a source of trade, quickly devolved into conflict, cutting off vital food supplies. Disease, drought, and sheer incompetence conspired to create a perfect storm of disaster. As winter descended, sealing them off from any hope of resupply, the grim reality set in. The dream turned into a desperate scrabble for existence, and the menu, my friends, became truly, terrifyingly inventive. The desperate measures taken during the starving time read like a list of progressively more horrifying ingredients for a Gothic horror novel. First, the horses were eaten, their sinewy flesh a temporary reprieve. Then, the dogs, once loyal companions, became just another source of protein. Rats, usually despised vermin, were hunted with a terrifying zeal, their meager bodies offering a few precious calories. Snakes, normally avoided, became a culinary option. But as the winter deepened, As the emaciated figures stumbled through the snow-covered settlement, even these grim pickings vanished. The hunger became an all-consuming fire, burning away every shred of civility, every last vestige of the human spirit. And that's when they turned to the unthinkable. That's when the truly dark foundation for the land of plenty was laid. For centuries, rumors and whispered accounts of cannibalism during the starving time circulated, often dismissed as sensationalist propaganda or the fevered imaginations of a desperate few. But then, in 2012, archaeologists digging in Jamestown made a discovery that sent a chill down the spines of historians: the grim remains of Jane. This 14-year-old girl, whose skull and leg bone bore unmistakable cut marks consistent with dismemberment and flesh removal, provided the incontrovertible, horrifying evidence. Her brain had been removed, her muscles stripped, not for ritual, but for sustenance. The marks on her bones told a story of utter, dehumanizing desperation, a final act of survival at the most profound moral cost. It was a stark, undeniable confirmation that the unspeakable had indeed occurred, that hunger had driven these early colonists to consume one of their own. The political and social fallout from such an event, even if suppressed or denied for centuries, must have been immense. How does a society, a fledgling community striving to establish itself, recover from such a profound trauma? How do you rebuild trust, reestablish norms, and reimagine a shared future when the memory of what happened hangs over every communal meal, every shared glance? The psychological scar, even if buried beneath layers of subsequent history and romanticized narratives, must have been deep and enduring. It's a testament to the incredible resilience and perhaps the profound capacity for denial that Jamestown not only survived, but eventually thrived. But that success came at an unspeakable cost, a foundation built not just on courage and perseverance, but on a bedrock of unimaginable human suffering and the ultimate violation of human taboos. So, the next time you toast to the intrepid spirit of America's founding, perhaps spare a thought for Jane and for all those anonymous souls who suffered during the starving time. It's a truly dark foundation for the land that would become synonymous with abundance, a chilling reminder that beneath the veneer of progress and plenty lie the stark, horrifying realities of human desperation. It's a chapter of history where the only thing on the menu was survival, no matter the ingredient, no matter the cost. And that, my friend, is a meal that will haunt you long after the last morsel is consumed. Now, let's take a sharp turn from the desperate pragmatism of starvation to the utterly mind-boggling extravagance of Roman culinary atrocities. Forget the humble struggle for survival. We're entering a realm where extreme wealth met extreme boredom, and the resulting offspring was a gastronomic nightmare, fueled by ostentation, excess, and a disturbing lack of good taste. The Roman elite, with their vast empires and even vaster appetites, didn't just eat, they performed their meals. Their banquets were less about sustenance and more about spectacle, a theatrical display of power and status designed to shock, impress, and occasionally make their guests quietly excuse themselves to vomit in a discreet corner. You see, when you've conquered half the known world, when gold flows like water, and when your biggest daily challenge is deciding which toga to wear, mere deliciousness becomes utterly passé. The Roman aristocracy craved novelty. something to titillate their jaded palates and assert their undisputed dominance. And thus, the culinary monstrosity was born. They weren't just eating food, they were eating their very status, their boundless wealth, and their contempt for the ordinary. It was a competition of who could procure the rarest, most expensive, and often most ethically dubious ingredients, and then present them in the most absurdly elaborate ways imaginable. This wasn't about savoring, it was about showing off, and the louder the flex, the better. Consider, if you will, the majestic flamingo, a creature of stunning beauty with its vibrant pink plumage. And what did the Romans do with it? They ate its tongue. Yes, its tongue. Imagine the sheer effort and expense in catching, killing, and preparing enough flamingos to provide a sufficient number of tongues for a banquet. It wasn't about the taste, though ancient gourmands claimed it was a delicacy. It was about the statement. I am so rich, so powerful, so utterly detached from common sense that I can afford to slaughter dozens of beautiful birds just to serve their tiny tongues as a fleeting appetizer. It was the ultimate flex dish, a flamboyant display of wealth that screamed, "My fortune is so immense, I can afford to be utterly wasteful and still laugh all the way to the vomitorium." And if flamingo tongues weren't enough to raise an eyebrow, how about peacock brains? Another magnificent bird, another incredibly small and difficult to extract delicacy. The sheer cost, the impracticality, the utter absurdity of it all was precisely the point. This wasn't food for nutrition, it was food as a weapon of social dominance. You'd gather your rival senators, your ambitious generals, your slightly jealous patrician neighbors, and you'd present them with a platter of peacock brains, knowing full well that they too would have to acknowledge your unparalleled extravaganza. It was a culinary arms race, a never-ending quest for the most ostentatious and ethically questionable ingredient that money could buy, all to ensure your guests left feeling simultaneously impressed and utterly inadequate. But perhaps the most famously peculiar Roman snack was the dormouse. Not just any dormouse, mind you, but specifically fattened dormice. These adorable, sleepy little rodents were kept in special terracotta jars called gleraria, designed with internal ramps and feeding chambers, where they would be force-fed nuts, chestnuts, and acorns until they reached an almost comically corpulent state. Once sufficiently rotund, they would be roasted whole, sometimes stuffed with minced pork and spices. Imagine, if you will, a tiny, furry, sleepy snack, rendered so impossibly fat it could barely waddle. It's an image that straddles the line between cute and utterly revolting, a truly unique culinary preference that, once again, speaks to the Roman love of the unusual and the slightly bizarre. Now, about that infamous vomitorium, let's dispel a common myth, shall we? Romans didn't actually puke to eat more. The vomitorium was simply an architectural feature, an entrance or exit way in amphitheaters that allowed crowds to spew forth, vomere, quickly. However, the Romans were indeed known for their excesses, and it wouldn't be entirely inaccurate to say that their dining habits might as well have involved institutionalized purging. They would often eat until they were uncomfortably full, sometimes consuming so much rich food that a natural, involuntary purging was probably a common occurrence. The sheer volume and richness of the food, combined with copious amounts of wine, probably meant that a lot of Romans were doing a fair bit of vomere outside the designated architectural exits anyway. So while the official myth is debunked, the spirit of gluttony absolutely remains. Ultimately, Roman banquets were a sheer spectacle, meticulously designed more for shock value and social posturing than for actual culinary enjoyment. They were elaborate, multi-course affairs, often lasting for hours, featuring dishes that were visually stunning, conceptually outrageous, and frequently borderline inedible to a modern palate. From grand theatrical presentations to dishes that defied all common sense, the Roman elite used food as a potent tool of power, a luxurious indulgence that pushed the boundaries of taste and decency. It was a time when excess wasn't just tolerated, it was celebrated, a testament to an empire so rich, so confident in its power, that it could afford to waste vast resources on culinary follies that still make us gasp 2 millennia later. And honestly, isn't that just a little bit impressive in a horrifying sort of way? You thought your modern hot sauce had a kick? You believe sriracha is the pinnacle of pungent condiments? Bless your innocent, uninitiated palate. Because today, my friends, we're diving into the ancient world's true king of flavor, a concoction so intensely savory, so profoundly aromatic, and by aromatic, I mean revolting to the uninitiated, it puts all your modern fermented foods to shame. We are talking about garum, the Roman Empire's liquid gold, a fishy fetish that permeated every level of society, from the lowest plebeian's gruel to the most lavish imperial banquet. It wasn't just a condiment. It was a cornerstone of ancient cuisine, a staple so ubiquitous, it was effectively the ancient world's MSG, salt, and umami bomb, all rolled into one glorious, stinking package. Garum was more than a mere seasoning. It was an obsession. For the Romans, it was the ultimate flavor enhancer, a deep, complex, salty, and utterly unforgettable addition to almost everything they ate. Imagine soy sauce, but ramped up to 11, then left to ferment in the Mediterranean sun for months, with a liberal dash of ancient fish guts and a side of profound historical mystery. It was used in everything imaginable, to flavor meat, to dress vegetables, to season stews, to dip bread, and even, horrifyingly, mixed into wine. If a Roman chef wasn't quite sure what a dish needed, the answer was almost always more garum. It was their culinary safety net, their secret weapon, and their proudest contribution to the world of fermented delights. Now, let's talk about the manufacturing process, because this is where the romance of antiquity takes a rather abrupt and profoundly smelly nosedive. The recipe for garum was simplicity itself, if you had a strong stomach and an even stronger sense of smell. You'd take whole small fish, or just the guts and blood of larger fish, layer them with copious amounts of salt, and then leave the whole pungent mixture to ferment under the scorching Mediterranean sun for weeks, sometimes months. The fish would slowly decompose, breaking down into a thick, briny liquid, an enzymatic liquefaction of piscine remains. The resulting liquid, after being strained, was garum. Imagine the smell. Imagine the flies. Imagine the sheer, unadulterated olfactory assault that must have emanated from these garum factories. It's a smell that would kill a lesser man, and probably drive a modern-day health inspector to declare an international biohazard. Despite, or perhaps because of, its profoundly offensive aroma, Garam's omnipresence in Roman cuisine cannot be overstated. From the bustling market stalls where common folk would buy their daily ration, to the pristine kitchens of the aristocratic elite, garum was everywhere. It was as fundamental to Roman cooking as salt and olive oil. If you were eating in ancient Rome, you were almost certainly eating garum. It was a taste that defined an empire, a flavor that transcended social divides, uniting rich and poor in a shared appreciation for fermented, fishy goodness. It speaks volumes about the ancient palate, a palate clearly far more accustomed to intense, challenging flavors than our own. You might be thinking, well, we have fish sauce today, what's the big deal? And you're right. Southeast Asian fish sauces like nuoc mam or naan pla are distant cousins to garum, sharing that same powerful umami punch born of fermented fish. But historical accounts and archaeological findings suggest that garum was on a whole other level of pungency and complexity. There were different grades and varieties, from the cheap, potent stuff for the masses to highly prized, expensive versions made from specific fish or with added herbs and spices. Some garum was so highly valued, it was effectively considered a luxury item, traded across the vast Roman Empire, testament to its profound cultural and culinary importance. Ultimately, garum represents a taste for the truly acquired, a culinary preference that challenges our modern sensibilities and forces us to reconsider what we define as delicious. It was a bold, unapologetic flavor, born of necessity and elevated to an art form, a testament to humanity's enduring fascination with fermentation and its capacity to transform the seemingly unpalatable into an indispensable delicacy. So, the next time you dash a little soy sauce on your stir-fry or a splash of fish sauce into your curry, take a moment to appreciate its ancient, intensely aromatic ancestor. Just be glad you don't have to smell the factory where it was made, or eat it with literally every meal. Because, trust me, a little goes a very long way. All right, buckle up, because we're about to pivot from the merely pungent to the profoundly ghoulish. We're stepping into the shadowy, utterly bewildering realm of medieval medicine, where the line between healing and horror was blurrier than a poorly rendered medieval manuscript. Imagine, if you will, the bustling marketplace of a medieval city. Amidst the clamor of merchants hawking their wares, fresh bread, pungent cheeses, lengths of cloth, you'd find another vendor, perhaps a shadowy apothecary, discreetly peddling powdered human remains. Yes, you heard that correctly. Welcome to the grim, lucrative, and utterly macabre world of mummia. The concept of mummia as a cure-all is one of history's most disturbing examples of misguided medical practice. It referred to ground-up human mummies, specifically Egyptian ones, but eventually any desiccated human corpse, believed to possess powerful restorative and medicinal properties. You see, the medieval mind, grappling with a rudimentary understanding of anatomy and disease, often ascribed magical or mystical powers to the exotic and the ancient. And what could be more ancient and mystical than the perfectly preserved remains of an Egyptian pharaoh, or at least some random ancient Egyptian who got the full mummification treatment? This was, effectively, cannibalism repackaged as pharmaceutical science, a truly unsettling fusion of ancient reverence and medieval desperation. The medieval misconception was rooted in a twisting of an ancient Arabic word, mumia, which originally referred to bitumen, or a kind of tar used in mummification. Over time, this term became associated with the mummies themselves, And with it, the belief that these preserved bodies held miraculous healing powers. People genuinely believed that ingesting dried human flesh and bone could cure everything from headaches and epilepsy to stomach ailments and even the plague. Imagine the thought process. This person lived for centuries, their body preserved in time. Surely, their essence holds the key to my longevity. It's a logic so profoundly flawed, so desperately hopeful, it's almost tragic. From pharmacies to dinner plates, the journey of Mumia was a bizarre and horrifying one. Apothecaries, those ancient pharmacists, would stock shelves with powdered mummy, selling it as a legitimate medical ingredient. But it wasn't just restricted to medical tinctures and peltices. Mumia also found its way into drinks and even food, mixed into bread or wine, a truly disturbing addition to any medieval meal. Imagine taking a bite of bread, knowing it contained the ground-up remains of someone who lived thousands of years ago. The sheer ethical nightmare of it all is staggering. This wasn't a fringe practice. It was a widely accepted, albeit grisly, part of mainstream medicine for centuries, only falling out of favor in the 18th century as scientific understanding advanced. Of course, the ethical nightmare of this practice is glaringly obvious to our modern sensibilities. The demand for mumia led to widespread grave robbing, with ancient Egyptian tombs being systematically plundered to supply European apothecaries and even artists. Mummy brown was a popular pigment. Imagine bands of grave robbers, under the cover of night, desecrating sacred sites, not for gold or jewels, but for the desiccated remains of the dead, all to satisfy a bizarre medical fad across a continent. It was a global trade in human remains, driven by superstition and a profound lack of scientific rigor. The scale of this macabre commerce is truly mind-boggling, a testament to humanity's capacity for both ingenuity and appalling exploitation. And the crowning irony of consuming mumia? Ingesting ancient plagues while seeking health. Many mummies, especially those hastily plundered and poorly preserved, were undoubtedly carrying ancient bacteria, viruses, or parasites. So while desperate individuals sought a cure for their ailments, they were more likely to be ingesting the very pathogens that had plagued the ancients, or, at the very least, a generous dose of dust and whatever decomposition products had accumulated over millennia. It's a darkly comedic twist on the quest for well-being, a medical misadventure of epic proportions. It reminds us that sometimes the strangest meals are born from a terrifying blend of ignorance, desperation, and a profound misunderstanding of how the human body, or indeed history, actually works. Thank your lucky stars for modern medicine, and perhaps try to avoid any ancient remedies that come in powdered human form. Just a thought. All right, let's wade into a culinary tradition that, for many in the Western world, is profoundly unsettling, yet for countless cultures across millennia, represents a vital, nutritious, and perfectly respectable meal: the consumption of animal blood. Before you recoil in horror, consider this. In a world where food was scarce, where every single part of a hunted or domesticated animal was a precious resource, discarding blood was simply unthinkable. It was a nutrient powerhouse, rich in iron and protein, and wasting it would have been not just foolish, but almost sacrilegious. This practice, often seen through a squeamish lens today, is a testament to humanity's enduring waste not, want not ethos, taken to its most sanguine conclusion. The most common, and perhaps least shocking to some, manifestation of blood-based cuisine is blood pudding or blood sausage. From the black pudding of the UK and Ireland, to Germany's Blutwurst, to the various blood sausages found across Scandinavia, Spain, and beyond, this dish is a global phenomenon. It's a practical, resourceful way to utilize a valuable resource that might otherwise go to waste. Typically, fresh blood, often from pigs, but sometimes cows or sheep, is mixed with fillers like oatmeal, barley, or breadcrumbs, along with spices, and then stuffed into casings and cooked. The result is a dark, rich, savory sausage, often enjoyed as part of a hearty breakfast or a substantial meal. It's a powerful flavor, earthy and metallic, and while it might be an acquired taste for the uninitiated, it's a deeply cherished comfort food for millions. Beyond the sausage, blood also forms the base of various soups. Think of the ancient Spartan black broth, or meles zomos, a notoriously unappetizing, to outsiders at least, concoction made from pork, blood, and salt. It was a Spartan staple, celebrated for its fortifying properties and its embodiment of their austere, no-frills lifestyle. Fast forward to modern-day Vietnam, and you find tiet canh, a dish of raw blood pudding typically made from duck or pig blood, mixed with fish sauce and herbs, and often topped with peanuts. The blood is kept from coagulating with a little fish sauce and then allowed to set, creating a vibrant, savory, and incredibly fresh-tasting dish. It's an intense culinary experience, one that challenges many Western palates, but is deeply beloved in its cultural context. From a purely nutritional aspect, blood is an absolute powerhouse. It's incredibly rich in iron, making it a fantastic way to combat anemia, especially in diets where meat might be scarce or less available. It's also packed with high-quality protein, essential for muscle growth and repair. For our ancestors, who often teetered on the brink of nutritional deficiency, blood wasn't just food, it was medicine, a vital source of life-sustaining nutrients. It was the original superfood for the brave, the pragmatic, and the utterly unsqueamish. It's a reminder that what we find challenging today was for millennia a simple, logical, and effective way to nourish the body. The squeamish factor, of course, is undeniable, particularly for many Western palates. The sight, the smell, the very concept of consuming blood can be deeply off-putting. It conjures images of violence, of the vital essence of life, and crossing that psychological barrier can be a significant hurdle. But this squeamishness is largely cultural, a learned aversion rather than an inherent biological repulsion. In cultures where blood is regularly consumed, it's simply another ingredient, another part of the animal to be honored and utilized. It highlights how arbitrary our culinary norms truly are, and how much our food preferences are shaped by our environment and upbringing. Ultimately, blood-based foods are a powerful testament to the waste not, want not philosophy, taken to its sanguine, logical conclusion. They represent a deep respect for the animal, an understanding that every part of it has value, and a pragmatic approach to survival and sustenance. So, the next time you see a black pudding on a menu, or encounter a dish like tiet canh, try to view it not through the lens of modern squeamishness, but through the vast, practical, and often beautiful lens of human history. It's a dish that reminds us of the ingenuity of our ancestors, their ability to transform the challenging into the nourishing, and their unwavering commitment to extracting every last ounce of life from their resources. Just, maybe don't offer it to your vegan friends immediately. Step right up, ladies and gentlemen, to the medieval medicine show, a time when physicians were part alchemist, part philosopher, and part, well, profoundly misguided chef. Forget scientific trials, randomized studies, or even basic hygiene. In the Middle Ages, your doctor often prescribed things that sound more like ingredients for a witch's brew than a pathway to health. It was an era where the line between folk remedy, genuine, if accidental cure, and outright delusion was so thin you could barely see it through the haze of incense and bad breath. And often, your cure came in the form of a truly bizarre meal. The dominant medical theory of the age was the humoral theory, inherited from the ancient Greeks. This charming concept held that the human body was composed of 4 basic humors: blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm. Health was all about keeping these 4 humors perfectly balanced. Too much blood? Bleed 'em. Too much phlegm? Eat something dry and hot. And the most potent tool in a medieval physician's arsenal for rebalancing these temperamental bodily fluids, you guessed it, food. Everything from your digestion to your emotional state was believed to be influenced by the hot, cold, wet, or dry qualities of your diet. So your doctor wasn't just deciding what to eat, they were literally prescribing your entire menu, often with ingredients that would make you question their sanity. One of the most ridiculously expensive and utterly fake cure-alls of the medieval and Renaissance periods was unicorn horn powder. Yes, the mythical creature ground up and sprinkled on your food. Or, more accurately, narwhal tusk, passed off as the genuine article. It was believed to cure poisons, purify water, and essentially render you invincible. Imagine the sheer audacity, spending a king's ransom on a supposed magical powder, believing it would heal you, when in reality you were just ingesting powdered whale tooth. It was the ultimate medieval scam, a placebo so powerful because of its cost and mystique that people genuinely believed it worked. And it was often administered in food, transforming a simple meal into a supposed elixir of life, or at least a very expensive delusion. But why aim for the mythical when you could reach for something a little more earthly? How about a spiderweb sandwich? Yes, a folk remedy for various ailments, often involving applying spider webs to wounds to stop bleeding, which, to be fair, does have some minor historical precedent in terms of clotting, though with obvious infection risks. But for internal issues, some believed that ingesting spider webs could cure fevers or even coughs. Imagine taking 2 slices of bread, slapping a freshly collected spider web in between, and then trying to swallow that dry, dusty, arachnid-flavored mouthful. Suddenly, even plain, unbuttered bread seems like a gourmet treat. It's a testament to the desperate inventiveness of medieval medicine, where a natural fiber found in abundance was seen as a potential lifesaver, somehow less appetizing than plain bread, but certainly more intriguing. And then there were the live eels, not just for eating, though they were certainly eaten, but specifically for consumption alive as a medical treatment. Believed to cure everything from jaundice to infertility, the idea was that the wriggling eel, ingested whole, would somehow cleanse the body or impart its vital life force. Imagine the sheer horror of trying to swallow a live, slippery eel, feeling it squirm down your throat. It's a scene ripped straight from a body horror film, not a physician's office. The desperate belief in such a brutal, uncomfortable remedy highlights the profound lack of understanding of human physiology and disease, where drastic, bizarre measures were often the only recourse when faced with serious illness. Ultimately, medieval medicinal foods occupy a fascinating, if deeply unsettling, space between folk wisdom and outright delusion. They remind us of a time when the human body was a mystery, disease a punishment, and remedies often as dangerous as the ailments they sought to cure. It's a stark reminder that while we often romanticize the past, medical progress has saved us from a truly bizarre and often painful menu of treatments. So, the next time you pop an aspirin or take a simple cough syrup, spare a thought for your medieval ancestors, who might have been munching on a spiderweb sandwich or chasing a live eel for their health, and be profoundly, deeply grateful for the advancements of modern science. Your stomach, and probably your sanity, will thank you for it. All right, let's talk about the absolute nadir of human culinary experience. A scenario so relentlessly grim, it makes our previous discussions of fermented fish guts and powdered mummies seem almost charmingly eccentric. We're going to the heart of siege warfare, where the walls that once protected a city or castle slowly transform into a cage, trapping its inhabitants in a slow, agonizing descent into starvation. This isn't just about rationing. This is about an entire population being deliberately starved into submission, and the desperate, often horrifying measures people took to avoid that ultimate surrender. When you're cut off from the outside world, when every resource is dwindling, survival becomes paramount, and the menu shifts from what's available to what isn't actively poisonous. The grim reality of siege warfare was a master class in controlled agony. Commanders understood that hunger was a weapon as potent as any cannon. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the food supplies would inevitably dwindle. First, the luxuries would vanish, then the staples. Then, the grim logic of survival would kick in, and every living thing, every organic scrap would be reevaluated as a potential meal. Imagine the slow, creeping panic as the last sacks of grain run out, the last barrels of salted meat are scraped clean. The sounds of hungry stomachs begin to echo the silence of the empty larder, and the eyes of the besieged start to take on a terrifying, desperate glint. Naturally, the first to go were the conventional animals, horses, if they weren't already used for cavalry, then any remaining cattle or pigs that hadn't been slaughtered early on. But as those resources evaporated, the definition of livestock broadened considerably. Cats, once cherished household companions, became a source of protein. Dogs, once loyal protectors, met the same fate. And the ever-present, often despised rat, usually seen as a plague, suddenly transformed into a valuable, if tiny, source of meat. Imagine the desperate hunts, the ingenious traps, the sheer relief when a scuttling rat was finally cornered. It wasn't a meal to be savored. It was a desperate, almost ritualistic act of defiance against the encroaching specter of death. The texture? Probably stringy, gamey, and full of despair. But what happens when even the last rat has been devoured, when the stray cat population has dwindled to zero, and the very concept of meat has become a distant, almost mythical memory? That's when people started looking at objects not traditionally considered food. Leather boots, belts, saddles, anything made of animal hide became potential calories. They would be boiled for hours, softening the tough material, creating a gelatinous, if profoundly unappetizing, broth. Then the softened leather would be gnawed, chewed, slowly broken down in a desperate attempt to extract any remaining nutrients. Imagine the taste, oily, leathery, and tinged with the metallic tang of desperation. It's a meal that speaks volumes about the utter breakdown of civilization, the absolute triumph of the biological imperative over human dignity. And for those clinging to the semblance of bread, even that became a horrifying parody of its former self. Sawdust, straw, tree bark, even ground up bones. Anything that could add bulk and some semblance of structure was mixed into meager flour supplies. The resulting bread would have been dense, gritty, and likely extremely difficult to digest, probably offering more splinters than actual calories. It was the ultimate extender, a culinary sleight of hand designed to fool the stomach, if not the protesting digestive system. Imagine the bitter taste, the dry, choking texture, a symbol of everything lost. The desperation of these choices cannot be overstated. Every living thing, every non-toxic fiber, became a potential meal. People would scrape lichen from rocks, search for stray weeds, boil roots, and consume things that, in times of plenty, they wouldn't have even considered touching. The human body, pushed to its absolute limits, would signal its needs in increasingly bizarre and terrifying ways. These were not choices made lightly. These were choices made with the full, horrifying understanding that the alternative was certain death. Siege diets are a stark, brutal reminder of the raw, uncompromising struggle for survival. A testament to humanity's resilience, yes, but also a chilling demonstration of the absolute depths to which we can be pushed when faced with the relentless, unyielding specter of starvation. So the next time you complain about your food delivery being late, spare a thought for those who would have killed for a boiled leather boot. Let's delve deeper into the relentless, grinding reality of famine, specifically in Europe, where entire populations face the agonizing choice between eating utterly unpalatable famine foods or simply starving to death. This wasn't a one-off event. Famine was a recurring, terrifying specter that haunted the continent for centuries, fueled by crop failures, wars, and unpredictable weather. And at the very core of survival during these bleak periods was bread, or rather, something that vaguely resembled bread, a dark, dense, often noxious concoction that was more a symbol of misery than a source of nourishment. The concept of bread during these times was a far cry from the fluffy, golden loaves we enjoy today. It was a testament to the ingenuity and desperation of human beings, who would grind, mix, and bake anything remotely edible into a solid form to stave off hunger. Imagine the collective despair as the grain stores dwindled, and the miller started adding increasingly strange and unappetizing fillers to the flour. This wasn't artisanal. It was existential. Perhaps one of the most famous examples of famine food is bark bread, particularly prevalent in Scandinavia during the Great Famine and other periods of extreme scarcity. When rye and wheat crops failed, people literally turned to trees for sustenance. The inner bark of certain trees, like pine, birch, or elm, would be stripped, dried, ground into a fine powder, and then mixed with whatever meager flour was available. The resulting bread was black, dense, and incredibly coarse, tasting bitter and woody. It was notoriously difficult to digest, often causing severe constipation or other intestinal issues, but it provided some bulk and a few precious calories. Imagine gnawing on a piece of this bread, knowing that you are literally eating parts of a tree, a silent, woody monument to your own desperate circumstances. It's a meal that whispers of profound hunger and ultimate resignation. Another common famine staple was acorn flour. Now, acorns, in their raw state, are incredibly bitter and often mildly toxic due to high tannin content. But for centuries, indigenous peoples across the globe had developed sophisticated methods for processing them, leaching them in water for days or even weeks to remove the bitterness. During European famines, these traditional methods were rediscovered or intensified. People would collect vast quantities of acorns, painstakingly process them, and then grind them into a coarse flour, which could then be mixed with other grains or baked into a rudimentary bread. It was a labor-intensive, often unpleasant process, turning a difficult, unpalatable nut into a last-ditch source of carbohydrates. Imagine the sheer effort, the hours spent leaching and grinding just to produce a few mouthfuls of this bitter, earthy sustenance. And when even bark and acorns weren't enough, people resorted to even more extreme measures. Grinding up bones, typically animal bones, but sometimes even human bones during truly horrific famines, was another way to add calcium and bulk to desperate meals. These bone powders would be mixed into flour or gruel, providing some mineral content and a psychological sense of fullness. Imagine the texture, gritty, chalky, and probably imparting a strange, lingering taste to whatever meager dish it was mixed into. It's a truly stark reminder of how close humanity often skirts the precipice of starvation, and how utterly relentless the struggle for survival can be. The taste of desperation, my friends, is not one you'd ever choose to experience. It's the bitter tang of bark, the earthy grit of acorn, the chalky residue of bone. It's the flavor of a collapsing society, the aroma of dwindling hope, and the texture of relentless, agonizing hunger. These famine foods, these black breads of misery, stand as powerful, often horrifying, reminders of the fragility of human existence and the profound importance of our food systems. They are a testament to the fact that when the stomach growls loud enough, the human mind will find a way to make almost anything edible, even if it leaves an indelible, bitter taste in the mouth of history. So the next time you see a beautifully baked loaf of artisanal sourdough, remember its ancestors, the grim, unyielding black breads of famine, and be thankful for every soft, fluffy, delicious crumb. All right, from the grim simplicity of famine foods, let's swing wildly in the opposite direction, to a dish so ancient, so utterly bizarre, and so steeped in royal tradition that it might just make your stomach do a little flip-flop. We're talking about the lamprey pie, a medieval English royal delicacy that combines a creature straight out of a horror movie with the pomp and circumstance of a monarch's banquet. If you thought eating a peacock brain was ostentatious, wait until you meet this jawless, parasitic nightmare. First, let's address the star of our show, the lamprey. What, pray tell, is a lamprey? Imagine an eel, but then give it a suction cup mouth lined with concentric rows of razor-sharp teeth. No jaws, just a terrifying, toothy suckhold designed for latching onto other fish and draining their blood and bodily fluids. It's a parasitic, prehistoric fish that looks like an alien horror, a creature straight out of H.P. Lovecraft's aquatic nightmares. These cartilaginous fish predate the dinosaurs, making them living fossils and, frankly, a truly unsettling sight to behold. Yet, for centuries, they were considered a prized delicacy, particularly for the English monarchy. A dish fit for a king, indeed. And not just any king. Henry I, a famously enthusiastic consumer of lampreys, is reputedly said to have died from a surfeit of lampreys in 1135. Yes, he literally ate so many of these blood-sucking horrors that he keeled over. Imagine having such an intense culinary preference for a parasitic eel that it ultimately leads to your demise. It's a level of dedication to a specific foodstuff that borders on the insane, a testament to the powerful allure of this ancient delicacy. Clearly, when you're king, dietary moderation is just a suggestion, especially when faced with a particularly good lamprey pie. The preparation of lampreys for royal consumption was, as you might expect, rather elaborate. They were often baked into massive, intricately decorated pies, sometimes containing dozens of the creatures. These weren't just meals, they were symbols of wealth, status, and royal prerogative. The lampreys would be cleaned, often marinated in wine and spices, then carefully arranged within a sturdy pastry crust. The pie itself would be a centerpiece of the royal table, a grand culinary statement proclaiming the monarch's power and access to such rare and expensive ingredients. Imagine the scene. A bustling medieval kitchen, chefs meticulously preparing these slithering terrors, all to satisfy the specific, unsettling cravings of the crown. The cultural significance of the lamprey pie is immense, a tradition stretching back centuries. For the city of Gloucester, in particular, it was a source of great pride and a symbol of their historic connection to the monarchy. They were required to send a lamprey pie to the monarch every Christmas, a tradition that continued for hundreds of years. This wasn't just about food. It was about loyalty, tribute, and the perpetuation of ancient customs. Even into the 20th century, special lamprey pies were sent to Queen Elizabeth II for her coronation and jubilees, a truly ancient and enduringly unsettling culinary preference that has survived countless changes in culinary fashion. So here we have it, a truly ancient and profoundly unsettling culinary preference. A parasitic, jawless fish transformed into a royal delicacy, a symbol of power, and even, for one king, the cause of death. It's a dish that challenges our modern notions of what constitutes good food, reminding us that taste is deeply cultural and historically contingent. While you might opt for a perfectly grilled salmon or a tender piece of cod, imagine sitting at a medieval banquet. A grand lamprey pie steaming before you, its contents a testament to a time when reptilian rarity was the ultimate royal relish. And then, perhaps, be thankful for the relatively normal seafood options available to you today. Your local fishmonger probably doesn't stock prehistoric bloodsucker, and that, frankly, is a good thing. The age of exploration, a time of daring voyages, uncharted waters, and the intrepid spirit of discovery. Sounds magnificent, doesn't it? Well, let me introduce you to the less glamorous, significantly more horrific side of those grand adventures. The constant, gnawing threat of scurvy, the grim reality of empty bellies, and the sheer, desperate gamble of encountering unknown foods in unknown lands. Because for every brave captain planting a flag on a new shore, there were dozens of sailors suffering a truly gruesome demise, their bodies rotting from the inside out, their stomachs empty or filled with whatever questionable sustenance could be scrounged. The horror of scurvy, my friends, is a tale of scientific ignorance and unimaginable suffering. For centuries, sailors embarked on long voyages with no understanding of this insidious disease. It was caused by a simple lack of vitamin C, but without that knowledge, it was a mysterious killer. Imagine your gums bleeding, teeth falling out, old wounds reopening, joints swelling, skin erupting in hideous sores, and finally, a slow, agonizing death from exhaustion and infection. A truly gruesome way to go, and it decimated crews on every single long sea voyage. More sailors died from scurvy than from storms, shipwrecks, or hostile encounters combined. It was the silent, invisible enemy, stalking every ship, preying on every crew member. Attempts at prevention and cure were, for a long time, tragically misguided. Early efforts included everything from sulfuric acid, unsurprisingly unhelpful, to maltwort. Captain James Cook, a keen observer, famously kept his crews relatively scurvy-free, not because he understood vitamin C, but because he meticulously ensured fresh food, including sauerkraut, and hygiene. But the actual understanding of citrus as the cure remained elusive for centuries, only truly being grasped by the Royal Navy in the late 18th century, thanks to the pioneering work of physician James Lind. Before that, countless lives were lost to a problem that could have been solved by a simple lime. It's a poignant, infuriating testament to the slow, often painful march of scientific progress. And when these brave, or perhaps foolhardy explorers finally made landfall in uncharted territories, what awaited them? Not a fully stocked grocery store, that's for sure. They encountered exotic and often dangerous new foods. Unknown flora and fauna, some delicious, some deadly, some simply baffling. Imagine the first Europeans to encounter a pineapple, or a potato, or a chili pepper. Or, conversely, imagine them encountering a highly poisonous plant, mistaking it for something edible, and suffering a swift, painful demise. Every new food was a gamble, a test of observation, local knowledge, and sheer luck. Without a local guide, every meal was potentially your last. Survival in these uncharted territories meant embracing a profound level of culinary opportunism. They ate whatever the locals ate, if the locals were amenable and willing to share their knowledge. This often meant strange fruits, unknown roots, and animals never before seen by European eyes. Or, more often, they ate whatever they could catch, find, or scrounge. Turtles, seabirds, fish, shellfish, anything that could be hunted or gathered became fair game. It was a reversion to primal scavenging, a constant search for calories in a world that was beautiful but utterly indifferent to their plight. Imagine the constant fear, the gnawing hunger, and the quiet desperation of every meal. The true cost of discovery, then, was not just lives lost to storms or battles, but stomachs full of questionable sustenance, bodies ravaged by disease, and minds pushed to the brink by relentless hunger. The age of exploration was a triumph of human daring, but it was also a harrowing tale of human suffering, a relentless battle against the elements and the unforgiving reality of a world that didn't care for European sensibilities. So, the next time you marvel at a map of historical voyages, Spare a thought for the anonymous sailors whose journeys were less about glory and more about the desperate, daily struggle to keep scurvy at bay and find anything, absolutely anything, to fill their perpetually empty stomachs. And perhaps consider adding some vitamin C to your diet, just in case you decide to sail around the world in a wooden boat tomorrow. All right. Let's fast forward a bit from the nautical horrors to the grand, theatrical, and utterly over-the-top banquets of the Renaissance. If medieval dining was about demonstrating wealth with lamprey pies, Renaissance feasting took it to an entirely new, almost ludicrous level. This wasn't just food, it was art, spectacle, and a breathtaking, often wasteful, display of power. Imagine a modern-day influencer's most elaborate, visually stunning, and ultimately unappetizing food stunt, then multiply it by 1,000, add a dash of royal prerogative, and a sprinkle of, we can afford to do literally anything. The table was a stage, and the food, its grand, dramatic players. The Renaissance banquet was the ultimate theater of the table, a place where culinary skill met outrageous ostentation. These feasts were not merely meals. They were carefully choreographed performances designed to dazzle, entertain, and utterly overwhelm the senses. Every dish, every presentation, every elaborate centerpiece was a deliberate statement of the host's wealth, sophistication, and boundless resources. The rich, the powerful, the newly moneyed aristocracy, they all engaged in this culinary arms race, trying to outdo each other with ever more extravagant and fantastical displays. It was less about taste and more about the wow factor, a feast for the eyes and the ego, even if the actual food sometimes fell short. One of the defining features of these banquets were entremets, elaborate, often non-edible, displays presented between courses. Think of them as the original dramatic interlude, designed to entertain and cleanse the palate, mentally, if not literally. These could be anything from miniature castles made of sugar, to mechanical devices that moved and sang, to roasted peacocks, meticulously redressed in their brilliant feathers, sometimes even with gold leaf applied to appear alive and majestic on the platter. Imagine a perfectly roasted bird, then having its feathers reattached, its beak propped open, looking as if it had just strutted onto the table. It's a striking image, a blend of culinary art and slightly morbid taxidermy, all for the sake of theatrical impact. And of course, for maximum impact, nothing quite beat the whole roasted animal. From massive boars, roasted whole and brought out with apples in their mouths, to various large game, the idea was to present the creature in its entirety, a primal display of hunting prowess and abundance. And sometimes, just sometimes, for the truly extravagant, this would include a whole roasted ostrich. Imagine the sheer logistical challenge of roasting an entire ostrich, a bird capable of running faster than a horse, then presenting it, intact and steaming, as the centerpiece of your banquet. It's a statement so audacious, so utterly over the top, it leaves you wondering if anyone actually ate it, or if it was simply there to be admired, photographed, if cameras existed, and then quietly wheeled away. Speaking of theatricality, Renaissance banquets were also famous for their surprise factor. Pies that, when cut open, released live birds that flew around the dining hall, much to the, presumably, delighted gasps of the guests. Or, even more bizarrely, pies that released live dwarves, popping out to entertain the assembled company. It's a level of extreme, almost vaudevillian entertainment, intertwined with dining, that is utterly alien to our modern sensibilities. Imagine the health and safety regulations involved in preparing a pie that contained a live human being. The sheer ingenuity, the meticulous planning, and the slightly unhinged creativity involved in these performances are truly astounding, if also more than a little disturbing. Ultimately, Renaissance feasting was a period where culinary skill met outrageous ostentation, often, it must be said, at the expense of actual taste. It was an era of profound social display, where food transcended its basic purpose and became a powerful symbol of status, power, and boundless imagination. It reminds us that humanity's relationship with food isn't just about sustenance. It's about culture, performance, and the endless pursuit of the novel, no matter how bizarre or ethically questionable that pursuit might become. So the next time you attend a fancy dinner party, perhaps consider how dull it is compared to a roasted ostrich that spits fire, or a pie that releases a dwarf. And then be quietly grateful for the lack of live birds in your dessert. All right, mes amis, let's hop, skip, and jump across the English Channel to France, a nation globally renowned for its culinary sophistication, its delicate pastries, its rich sauces, and its unapologetic consumption of things that other nations often view with a mixture of disgust and condescension. Because for centuries, the French have been teased, ridiculed, and occasionally outright scorned by their neighbors, particularly the British, for their peculiar gastronomic preferences, specifically for eating frogs and snails. This isn't just about weird food, it's about national identity, cultural pride, and a fascinating look at how perceived strange foods can transform into national treasures. The other food, how neighboring cultures viewed French eating habits with often sneering disdain. The British, with their hearty roasts and plain boiled vegetables, often cast the French as effete, bizarre, and certainly not to be trusted with anything as sacred as a Sunday dinner. Frogs became a pejorative nickname for the French, a symbol of their perceived otherness and culinary eccentricity. It's a classic example of cultural prejudice dressed up as gastronomic judgment. But while the English might have scoffed, the French were quietly, confidently, and deliciously developing these strange foods into an art form. Take frog legs, for instance, cuisses de grenouille. For many, the very thought is enough to trigger a full-body shudder. The image of a frog, usually associated with lily pads and science class dissections, is not typically linked to haute cuisine. Yet, in France, frog legs transformed from a peasant food, eaten out of necessity, frogs were abundant and free, into a beloved delicacy. The preparation is key. Typically pan-fried in butter and garlic, they have a delicate, slightly fishy, slightly chicken-like flavor. The texture is what often throws people off. Tender, moist, and undeniably leg-like. Imagine a tiny, succulent drumstick that you nibble on, convinced that it's simply a small chicken, until the image of the amphibian suddenly leaps into your mind. It's a testament to the power of preparation and cultural acceptance. And then there are snails, or escargots. For many, they are garden pests, slimy creatures that leave trails across your prized petunias. But for the French, they are transformed into a garlic butter-drenched delight, a starter so iconic it's practically a symbol of French gastronomy. Like frog legs, snails were initially a peasant food, a readily available source of protein for those who couldn't afford more expensive meats. But with the addition of garlic, parsley, and copious amounts of butter, baked until tender and fragrant, they became an utterly irresistible delicacy. Imagine pulling a plump, garlicky snail from its shell, feeling the chewy texture, and realizing that this pest is, in fact, incredibly delicious. It's a culinary redemption story for the ages. The transformation of these humble, often reviled ingredients into national treasures is a fascinating culinary revolution. It speaks to the ingenuity of French cooks, their ability to elevate even the most challenging ingredients into something exquisite. It also highlights the power of cultural perception. What starts as a food of necessity for the poor can, through careful preparation and a shift in social status, become a symbol of refined taste and national pride. It's a powerful reminder that culinary norms are fluid, ever-changing, and entirely arbitrary. Your gross is someone else's gourmet. So the next time you find yourself turning up your nose at something unconventional, consider the frog and the snail. Their journey from vilified other food to celebrated delicacy is a powerful testament to the subjective nature of taste and the profound influence of culture. It's a reminder that what we find strange today might just be tomorrow's national treasure, especially if it's swimming in enough garlic butter. And who knows, maybe one day the world will truly embrace the glorious, buttery, garlic-infused delight of the French frog or snail. Or maybe not. But they'll still be eating them in France, and that's all that matters. Vive la différence! All right, from the relatively charming, if still slightly off-putting to some, frog legs, we're descending into a culinary practice so shrouded in controversy, so ethically charged, and yet so utterly prized by a certain segment of gastronomes, it feels less like a meal and more like a macabre ritual. We're talking about the ortolan bunting, a small songbird, and its heartbreaking, deliciously forbidden supper. This isn't just a delicacy. It's a symbol of extreme gastronomic excess, profound cruelty, and a deep-seated human desire for the rare and the illicit. Let's introduce the unfortunate star of this grim performance, the ortolan bunting. A small, unassuming songbird, native to Europe and Asia, known for its beautiful plumage and sweet melodious song. Not, you might think, a creature destined for a dinner plate. But for centuries, particularly in France, this tiny bird has been subjected to a horrifying process designed to transform it into the ultimate culinary indulgence. Its small size, delicate bones, and sweet, nutty flavor, when prepared correctly, are what made it so prized. The ritual of eating the ortolan is as infamous as its preparation. The diner is typically instructed to cover their head with a large napkin, ostensibly to contain the precious aroma, but more likely to hide the shame, the guilt, or perhaps just the sheer mess of the act. The entire bird, bones and all, is then popped into the mouth, savored for its delicate flavors, and spit out, or sometimes swallowed whole, bones and all, after the deed is done. Imagine the scene: a hushed dining room, wealthy patrons sitting with napkins draped over their heads, silently crunching on a roasted songbird, a profoundly intimate and strangely unsettling act of consumption. The preparation of the ortolan is where the ethical debate truly ignites. The birds are typically caught during their migratory season, then imprisoned in tiny, dark cages. There, they are force-fed prodigious amounts of grain, often millet, figs, or grapes, until they swell to several times their natural size, becoming comically, agonizingly fat. This process, designed to tenderize their flesh and concentrate their fat, is undeniably cruel, a deliberate act of torture for gastronomic pleasure. And then, for the pièce de résistance, the birds are traditionally drowned alive in Armagnac, a type of brandy. This not only kills them, but also, so the gourmands claim, infuses their delicate flesh with the flavor of the alcohol. They are then roasted quickly, often for just a few minutes. This profound ethical debate has raged for years. For many, it's an unforgivable act of animal cruelty, a stark reminder of humanity's capacity for self-serving barbarism. For its devotees, it's a centuries-old tradition, an ultimate gastronomic experience, a connection to a specific taste and ritual that transcends modern sensibilities. It's a dish that squarely places the pleasure of the palate against the principles of animal welfare, creating an uncomfortable yet undeniably fascinating moral dilemma. It challenges us to confront the boundaries of what we deem acceptable in the pursuit of culinary delight. Today, the ortolan bunting is a legally protected species in France and across the European Union, and the sale and consumption of ortolan is largely illegal. Yet, like all forbidden fruit, its allure persists. Occasional reports surface of clandestine ortolan feasts, discreetly held for those willing to risk fines and public condemnation for a taste of this controversially exquisite bird. It remains a sought-after experience for some, a symbol of a bygone era of extreme indulgence, where tradition and taste trumped all other considerations. It's a dish that, even in its illegality, continues to provoke, to fascinate, and to remind us of the dark, sometimes ugly, side of human culinary desire. So, next time you hear a bird singing, perhaps appreciate it for its song, and not as a potential, tragically fattened, and brandy-drowned supper. Some things, perhaps, are best left off the menu. All right, let's cast our nets into the vast, mysterious depths of the ocean and pull up an ingredient so bizarre, so incredibly rare, and so profoundly strange, it almost defies belief that it ever made it onto a dinner plate. We are talking about ambergris, a waxy, aromatic substance formed in the digestive system of sperm whales. Yes, you heard that correctly. Whale vomit. Or, more accurately, a kind of hardened, aged, exquisitely fragrant whale poop that for centuries was not only prized in perfumery, but also found its way into high-end cuisine. Because apparently nothing says gourmet like a bit of oceanic intestinal byproduct. So what exactly is ambergris? Imagine a giant squid, or several, being eaten by a sperm whale. The indigestible parts, like the beaks and internal structures, can sometimes irritate the whale's digestive tract. In some cases, over many, many years, the whale produces a waxy substance that surrounds these irritants, protecting its gut. This waxy mass, often weighing many pounds, is then either expelled by the whale, which is where the vomit connection comes from, though it's more technically a fecal byproduct, or, more commonly, found floating in the ocean after the whale has died. It then floats, sometimes for decades, oxidizing and hardening, developing its unique, complex aroma. Historically, ambergris was prized above almost anything else, primarily in perfumery, where it acts as a fixative, making scents last longer, and imparting a unique musky, sweet, and earthy aroma. But it also had a surprising culinary history. In medieval and Renaissance Europe, it was used as a spice, a flavoring agent, and even an aphrodisiac, particularly for the wealthy elite. Imagine royalty sprinkling powdered whale gutstone over their elaborate dishes, believing it would enhance both flavor and virility. It was an ingredient that spoke of ultimate luxury, exoticism, and profound, if misguided, belief in its magical properties. What does ambergris taste and smell like? Well, for those fortunate, or perhaps unfortunate, enough to encounter genuine, aged ambergris, the smell is often described as complex and captivating, musky, sweet, earthy, with strong marine or even fecal undertones, but ultimately pleasant and unique. When used in food, it was usually in tiny amounts, grated or powdered, to impart a subtle, almost ethereal quality, described as sweet, warm, or even slightly vanillic, enhancing other flavors rather than dominating them. It was a flavor whisper, not a shout, a background note of profound rarity. Imagine a dash of something that smells vaguely like the ocean's ancient secrets, with a hint of something sweetly animalic, enhancing your dessert. The extreme rarity and cost of ambergris cannot be overstated. Genuine, high-quality ambergris is incredibly scarce, making it one of the most expensive substances on Earth, often more valuable than gold by weight. Sperm whales are endangered, and the trade in freshly harvested ambergris is illegal in many countries. However, found ambergris, washed up on beaches, can be legally collected and sold. This rarity, combined with its mysterious origin and unique properties, only added to its allure and mythical status as a culinary ingredient. It was a true treasure of the sea, a profound symbol of wealth and access. Ultimately, ambergris stands as a truly bizarre ingredient, born from oceanic wonders and human greed, superstition, and an insatiable desire for the exotic. It reminds us that our ancestors were willing to go to extraordinary lengths and embrace the profoundly unconventional in their quest for new flavors and the ultimate culinary status symbol. So the next time you see a fancy dessert or sniff an expensive perfume, spare a thought for the sperm whale, whose digestive byproduct once graced the tables of kings. And perhaps be glad that your modern desserts don't come with a side of aged whale excretion. Some things, perhaps, are better left as fascinating historical footnotes. Let's journey now into the murky, exciting, and often terrifying world of the early modern period, an era bubbling with nascent scientific curiosity, burgeoning chemistry, and a profound misunderstanding of, well, almost everything. This was a time when the pursuit of knowledge often collided head-on with outright superstition, and when experimentation in the kitchen could easily lead to a spectacular, if painful, trip to the grave. Welcome to the alchemist's dinner, where early food science, driven by a thirst for novelty and a complete lack of safety regulations, frequently went spectacularly wrong. This was the dawn of chemistry, a time when learned individuals were starting to poke and prod at the fundamental elements of the world, trying to understand how things worked, how they reacted, and how they could be transformed. Unfortunately, this was also a time before the inconvenient concepts of toxicity, dosage, and long-term health effects were fully grasped. Unfortunately, this was also a time before the inconvenient concepts of toxicity, dosage, and long-term health effects were fully grasped. Imagine a brilliant, but utterly reckless mind in a smoke-filled laboratory, excitedly mixing strange powders and liquids, then deciding, I wonder what this tastes like with a bit of my roast chicken. It was an era of playing with ingredients without a full understanding of the profound dangers they posed. Early food preservation attempts, in particular, were a veritable minefield of toxic ingredients. Before refrigeration, before pasteurization, before even a clear understanding of bacteria, people desperately sought ways to make food last longer. And their methods? Oh, they were delightful, often involving liberal applications of lead, mercury, or other heavy metals, believed to ward off spoilage or enhance flavor. Imagine pickling your vegetables in a lead-lined pot, slowly infusing your food with neurotoxins. Or adding mercury compounds to preserve meat, subtly poisoning yourself with every bite. The slow, agonizing death from heavy metal poisoning was likely a far more common culinary outcome than any successful preservation. It's a stark reminder that sometimes the cure truly was worse than the disease, or, in this case, the spoilage. This era was also marked by a kind of philosopher's stone of cuisine, the ambitious, often delusional, quest to turn common ingredients into something miraculous, to find the culinary equivalent of gold. Alchemists and early chemists weren't just searching for ways to cure disease, they were also looking for ways to create entirely new flavors, to make food more potent, more beautiful, or simply more interesting. This might involve infusing foods with exotic and often toxic minerals, or trying to create artificial flavors from dubious sources. Imagine the hubris, the belief that simply mixing unknown compounds would magically elevate a dish, rather than simply render it inedible or fatal. The dangers of these untested theories were, to put it mildly, profound. Many of these experimental recipes likely led to illness, severe digestive upset, or, in numerous unrecorded cases, a rapid and unpleasant death. Without a scientific method for testing toxicity, without an understanding of chemical reactions in the human body, every culinary experiment was a roll of the dice. Imagine a dinner guest politely declining a dish, not because they disliked the taste, but because they had a sneaking suspicion it might contain a dash of arsenic. It was a period where your dinner could literally be a gamble with your life, making every meal an adventure in both taste and toxicology. Ultimately, the alchemist's dinner stands as a powerful warning against culinary hubris and the dangers of untested scientific theories. It reminds us that while the quest for innovation in food is admirable, it must always be tempered with knowledge, caution, and a profound respect for the delicate balance of the human body. So, the next time you marvel at a new food technology or a molecular gastronomy creation, spare a thought for the brave and often unlucky pioneers of early modern food science. Their experiments, though sometimes deadly, laid some of the groundwork for our understanding of food chemistry, allowing us to safely, mostly, push the boundaries of cuisine today. Just be glad your chef isn't also dabbling in lead compounds. Probably. Now, let's fast forward to the hallowed, gaslit streets of Victorian England, an era often celebrated for its industrial revolution, its scientific advancements, and its quaint, moralistic exterior. But beneath that veneer of progress and propriety lay a dark, unsettling truth. The food you ate on a daily basis could literally be trying to kill you. Welcome to the macabre menu of the Victorian era, where widespread food fraud and dangerous additives turned every meal into a perilous gamble, and where your dinner could very well lead to a slow, painful, agonizing demise. This wasn't just poor quality, it was an epidemic of deliberate, calculated poisoning, all in the name of profit. The Industrial Revolution, while bringing immense progress, also had a profoundly dark side when it came to food. The rapid growth of cities, the burgeoning population, and the need for cheap, mass-produced food created an environment ripe for exploitation. Manufacturers, driven by greed and a profound lack of regulation, sought any means necessary to stretch their ingredients, cut costs, and enhance the appearance of their products. This meant that what you bought, from the baker to the milkman, often bore little resemblance to its advertised purity, and usually came with a generous side of toxic extras. It was mass production meeting desperate measures, with the consumer as the unwitting victim. Consider the staples of the Victorian diet. Milk, supposedly a wholesome source of nourishment, was routinely diluted with water, then bulked up with chalk or plaster of Paris to give it a milky appearance. Imagine pouring what you believe to be nutritious milk over your porridge when in fact you're essentially ingesting watered-down plaster dust. Flour, the very foundation of bread, was often adulterated with gypsum, alum, or chalk, making loaves appear whiter and more substantial than they were, but delivering little nutritional value and potential digestive issues. And as for bread itself, sawdust was a common additive, turning a basic necessity into a gritty, almost inedible bulk extender. Your daily sustenance was a lie, a cheap trick to pad the pockets of unscrupulous merchants. But the sheer audacity didn't stop at bulking agents. It extended to color and preservation, with truly horrifying results. Copper, a heavy metal, was routinely used to give pickles and vegetables a vibrant green color, turning a harmless side dish into a slow poison. Lead, a known neurotoxin, was added to cheese to improve its color and texture, subtly damaging the nervous systems of unsuspecting consumers. And for the ultimate indulgence, sweets and candies were often colored with arsenic, chromate of lead, or other vibrant but deadly pigments. Imagine a child excitedly reaching for a brightly colored sweet, unaware that they were literally consuming a dose of poison with every bite. It's a chilling thought, a period where your dinner could quite literally kill you, slowly and painfully, without you ever knowing why. It took the tireless efforts of early food safety pioneers, often referred to as the Poison Squad in America, though similar crusaders existed in Britain, to expose these horrors to the wider public. Scientists, doctors, and muckraking journalists bravely investigated, documented, and publicized the widespread food adulteration, often risking their careers and reputations. Their work was instrumental in raising public awareness and eventually pushing for legislation to regulate food production and ensure consumer safety. It was a monumental battle fought against powerful industrial interests to ensure that food was, at the very least, not actively trying to murder you. The Victorian era, then, stands as a stark reminder of a period where your dinner could literally kill you, slowly and painfully, shrouded in the guise of modernity. It's a horrifying chapter in the history of food, one that underlines the critical importance of food safety regulations, transparent labeling, and ethical manufacturing. So, the next time you casually pick up a packaged food item at the supermarket, spare a thought for your Victorian ancestors and be profoundly, deeply grateful for the regulations that mostly ensure your milk isn't chalk-infused, your pickles aren't copper-laced, and your candy isn't actively trying to poison you. It's a small miracle of the modern world. All right, let's journey back across the channel to the gritty, bustling streets of Victorian and early 20th century Britain, specifically to the working-class neighborhoods, where culinary survival wasn't about exotic ingredients or ostentatious displays, but about making every scrap count. Forget your gilded platters and peacock brains. Here, food was fuel, sustenance, and a testament to ingenuity born from necessity. We're talking about dishes like jellied eels and head cheese, traditional foods that are often viewed with profound skepticism by outsiders, but which embody a deep-seated nose-to-tail ethos and a profound respect for making the most of available, often less desirable, ingredients. The context is crucial. This wasn't about gourmet choices. It was about cheap, available ingredients that could provide sustenance to hard-working families. For the urban poor, especially in cities like London, traditional cuts of meat were expensive luxuries. Instead, they relied on offal, lesser-known fish, and parts of animals that wealthier classes deemed undesirable. These foods weren't born from a desire for trendy sustainability. They were born from the stark, uncompromising reality of poverty. It was nose-to-tail eating, not in a trendy, expensive, artisanal way, but in a raw, pragmatic, don't starve way. Jellied eels, for instance, are a quintessential East End London dish. Eels were once incredibly abundant in the River Thames and its tributaries, making them a cheap and readily available source of protein for the working class. The preparation is simple, yet yields a dish that is a texture nightmare for the uninitiated. Eels are chopped, simmered in a spiced broth until their natural collagen is released, and then left to cool. As they cool, the collagen sets, forming a savory jelly around the pieces of eel. Imagine a plate of gray, gelatinous cubes with bits of eel suspended within, served cold. The taste is savory, slightly fishy, and profoundly earthy. The texture, however, is what truly challenges people. It's soft, wobbly, and undeniably unique. For many, it's a nostalgic comfort food, a taste of home. For others, it's an acquired taste that remains stubbornly unacquired. Then there's head cheese, or brawn as it's often known in Britain. This isn't cheese in the dairy sense, but rather a terrine made from the boiled, deboned, and chopped head of a pig or calf, set in its own natural gelatinous broth. It's the ultimate example of using every part of the animal. The head, often discarded by the wealthy, was a treasure trove of meat, fat, and collagen for those who couldn't afford prime cuts. Imagine the painstaking process, boiling a pig's head for hours until the meat is falling off the bone, meticulously picking through it, chopping it up, mixing it with herbs and spices, and then pressing it into a mold to set. The result is a dense, savory, and surprisingly flavorful slab, often eaten cold with bread and pickles. It's rich, meaty, and undeniably gelatinous, a testament to culinary resourcefulness. And let's not forget tripe and onions. Tripe, the stomach lining of a cow or sheep, is another prime example of an offal dish that became a staple for the working class. It's incredibly cheap, but requires extensive preparation, usually hours of simmering, to render it tender and palatable. Served traditionally with onions in a milky sauce, it's a dish with a distinctive chewy texture and a mild savory flavor. For many, the visual and textural aspects of tripe are a significant hurdle, but for generations, it was a nourishing and affordable meal. It speaks volumes about a culture where nothing was wasted, where every part of an animal was valued for its potential to provide sustenance. These dishes, jellied eels, head cheese, tripe, are more than just strange foods. They are cultural touchstones, edible embodiments of resilience, resourcefulness, and a profound connection to a bygone era. They represent a time when every meal was a hard-won victory against poverty, and every scrap of food was treated with the respect it deserved. So the next time you encounter one of these working-class delights, don't just dismiss it as weird. Instead, appreciate it for the story it tells, the history it embodies, and the countless hungry mouths it fed. And then, if you're brave enough, perhaps try a bite. You might be surprised. Or, you might just stick to your avocado toast. No judgment here. All right, let's hurtle into the early 20th century, a time of breathless optimism, rapid technological advancement, and a profound, often hilarious ignorance about the true nature of science. This was an era when anything new and exciting was immediately embraced, often without an ounce of critical thought. And nothing was more exciting, more mysterious, or more dangerously misunderstood than radioactivity. Welcome to the radium water fad, a truly bizarre chapter where health didn't just mean eating strange things, it meant deliberately poisoning yourself with radioactive elements, all in the name of vigor and vitality. Because nothing says feeling good like your jaw literally falling off. The promise of radium, a newly discovered glowing element, was intoxicating. Scientists like Marie Curie were celebrated, and the public became utterly fascinated by this magical, invisible force. Radium was seen as a miracle cure-all, a source of invigorating energy that promised to restore youth, boost vitality, and cure everything from impotence to arthritis. Imagine a product that literally glowed in the dark, touted by doctors and celebrities as the secret to eternal health. It was a marketing dream, tapping into humanity's age-old desire for an easy fix, a magic bullet that would solve all ailments. The most infamous product of this fad was Radithor, a patented medicine consisting of triple distilled water containing known amounts of radium and mesothorium, another radioactive isotope. Marketed as perpetual sunshine in a bottle, it was prescribed by doctors and eagerly consumed by wealthy socialites. Imagine buying a bottle of water, believing it to be the ultimate health tonic, only for it to be quietly, insidiously poisoning you with every sip. It was the ultimate snake oil, sold with the dazzling, dangerous sheen of scientific novelty. People genuinely thought they were drinking their way to radiant health, when, in fact, they were slowly dissolving their own bones. The unfortunate fate of Eben Byers stands as the most chilling cautionary tale of the radium water fad. A wealthy American industrialist and amateur golfer, Byers was prescribed Radithor for an arm injury. He loved it so much, he drank several bottles a day for years, convinced it was the source of his energy and vitality. The initial side effects were subtle, but eventually his body began to disintegrate. His teeth fell out, he developed abscesses, his jaw literally fell off, and holes formed in his skull. When he finally died in 1932, his body was so radioactive he had to be buried in a lead-lined coffin. His story became a horrifying exposé, a vivid demonstration of the lethal consequences of unregulated health claims and misplaced scientific enthusiasm. Byers' story, along with mounting evidence of other illnesses and deaths, slowly brought an end to the radium health craze. It was a brutal wake-up call, exposing the profound gullibility of the public and the catastrophic dangers of unregulated health claims. The era serves as a stark reminder of what happens when scientific breakthroughs are prematurely commercialized, when public desperation meets unscrupulous marketing, and when genuine scientific marvels are twisted into dangerous fads. It's a testament to the fact that when science is new enough to be exciting, but not new enough to be safe, truly bizarre and dangerous things can happen. So, the next time you scroll through Instagram and see a new superfood or a detox tea promising miraculous results, perhaps take a moment to remember Eben Byers and his disintegrating jaw. The radium water fad is a darkly comedic, yet utterly tragic chapter in human history, a stark reminder that not all health trends are created equal, and some are just pure, unadulterated poison. And be profoundly grateful for the existence of regulatory bodies and evidence-based medicine, because sometimes the strangest things people ate or drank were marketed as the very definition of well-being, only to deliver a slow, radioactive demise. Cheers to that, I suppose. Let's shift gears from the individual folly of radium water to the collective struggle of nations at war, where the universal human need for sustenance was brutally twisted by the relentless demands of conflict. For millions during World War I and II, food wasn't a choice. It was a weapon, a morale booster, or a desperate daily calculation. This era produced some of the strangest, most unappetizing, and yet incredibly ingenious meals ever devised, born from shortages, blockades, and the sheer, unyielding will to survive. These weren't just meals. They were the taste of desperation, ingenuity, and the chilling reality of total war. Imagine, if you can, being a soldier in the trenches of World War I. Your daily sustenance consisted largely of trench food, hardtack, a brutally dry, dense biscuit that could break teeth, canned bully beef, a mysterious, gelatinous corned beef that tasted vaguely of sadness and preservatives, and whatever meager provisions could be scrounged or shared. Fresh food was a rarity, and hot food a luxury. Soldiers survived on monotonous, often unpalatable rations, constantly under threat of gas attack, shelling, and disease. It was a diet designed for minimal nutrition and maximum shelf life, not for morale or enjoyment. Imagine the sheer joy of a rare hot cup of tea or a slice of fresh bread, moments of fleeting normalcy amidst the carnage. Back on the home front, rationing became a way of life, particularly during World War II. Citizens were issued ration books, dictating how much meat, sugar, butter, and other essentials they could buy. This led to an explosion of ersatz foods and substitutes, and an astonishing amount of culinary creativity born from severe limitations. Coffee was made from roasted chicory or acorns. Bread often contained potato flour or other extenders. People learned to cook with very little fat, very little sugar, and often very little enthusiasm. Imagine the collective challenge of feeding a family for weeks on end with a handful of eggs, a tiny portion of meat, and a mountain of imagination. The German ersatz diet of both world wars was perhaps the most extreme example of culinary substitution. Blockaded and cut off from vital supplies, German scientists and food technologists were tasked with creating edible alternatives for almost everything. Coffee was made from roasted acorns, barley, or chicory. Bread often contained wood pulp, sawdust, or other non-nutritive extenders. Margarine was made from synthesized fats. Meat was stretched with vegetables and fillers. It was a diet of ingenuity born from utter desperation, a constant battle against the limitations of a total war economy. Imagine trying to make a satisfying meal when every ingredient is a pale imitation of the real thing, a testament to scientific desperation. On the British side, one of the most famous examples of wartime culinary ingenuity was the Lord Woolton pie. Named after Frederick Marquis, 1st Earl of Woolton, the Minister of Food during WW2, this vegetarian triumph was designed to be nutritious, filling, and make the most of limited ingredients. It was a vegetable pie, typically containing carrots, potatoes, parsnips, and often leeks or cauliflower, all topped with a potato pastry crust. It was presented to the public as a patriotic, delicious meal, a symbol of national unity and resourcefulness. It became a widely adopted recipe, a simple but effective way to provide much-needed nutrients when meat and other supplies were scarce. It was a triumph of necessity over desire, a testament to the British make-do-and-mend spirit, even in the kitchen. Ultimately, World War I and II rations offer a stark, sobering reminder of how conflict twists even the most basic human need for food. They represent a taste of profound desperation, the chilling ingenuity born from scarcity, and the collective resilience of populations forced to adapt to unimaginable conditions. So, the next time you complain about your supermarket being out of your favorite artisanal cheese, spare a thought for the millions who ate hardtack, bully beef, or bark bread, and who transformed vegetables into patriotic pies, all in the name of survival. And be profoundly grateful for the sheer abundance and safety of your everyday meals. It's a peacetime luxury we often take for granted. All right, let's talk about coffee. Not your regular, run-of-the-mill, ethically sourced, perfectly roasted, single-origin pour-over. No, we're diving into a realm where the journey of the coffee bean is so utterly bizarre, so fundamentally rooted in animal digestive systems, it makes you question everything you thought you knew about gourmet beverages. We're talking about Kopi Luwak, the infamous cat poop coffee, a brew so expensive and controversial, it's effectively the ultimate symbol of niche, high-end, and profoundly weird gastronomy, because apparently the perfect cup of joe sometimes requires a trip through an animal's colon. Our unsung hero in this story is the civet, a small nocturnal mammal native to Southeast Asia. It looks a bit like a cross between a cat, a ferret, and a raccoon, with a long snout and often a masked face. These curious creatures have a particular fondness for coffee cherries. They are drawn to the ripest, sweetest cherries, which they eagerly consume as part of their varied diet. They munch down the whole cherry, pulp and all, but here's the crucial part. They only digest the fleshy fruit. The coffee beans themselves, encased in their protective parchment, pass through the civet's digestive system largely intact. And that, my friends, is where the magic, or the profound grossness, depending on your perspective, happens. As the coffee cherries pass through the civet's gut, they undergo a unique fermentation process. Enzymes in the civet's digestive tract interact with the coffee beans, breaking down some of the proteins that contribute to bitterness. This enzymatic action is said to alter the flavor profile of the beans, making them smoother, less acidic, and imparting a distinctive, earthy aroma. The beans are then excreted, often in neat little clumps, ready to be collected, washed, roasted, and eventually brewed into what some claim is the world's finest cup of coffee. The supposed benefit, as these connoisseurs will passionately argue, is a coffee with unparalleled smoothness, reduced bitterness, and a complex flavor profile that includes notes of chocolate, caramel, and a distinctive earthiness. It's an experience, they say, that justifies the extreme measures and the exorbitant price tag. Imagine a cup of coffee so exquisitely refined, so utterly unique, that you're willing to overlook its rather unconventional origin story. It's the ultimate conversation starter, a brew that comes with a built-in anecdote that's guaranteed to raise eyebrows and, perhaps, stomachs. However, the Kopi Luwak conundrum comes with a hefty moral and ethical dilemma. Traditionally, Kopi Luwak was collected from the wild, where civets roamed free, naturally selecting and digesting the cherries. This wild collected Kopi Luwak is incredibly rare and expensive. But the skyrocketing demand and equally high prices have led to the proliferation of farmed Kopi Luwak, where civets are captured, confined to tiny cages, and force-fed coffee cherries. This practice is undeniably cruel, leading to severe animal welfare concerns, stress, malnutrition, and a host of other issues for these poor creatures. Many ethical coffee drinkers now boycott Kopi Luwak new to these abuses, raising important questions about how far we should go in pursuit of culinary novelty. Regardless of the ethical debate, the price tag alone makes Kopi Luwak one of the world's most expensive coffees. You're paying not just for the unique flavor, but for the inherent rarity and the profoundly bizarre journey those beans took through an animal's colon. It's a coffee for the truly adventurous, the deeply wealthy, or the utterly unconcerned with the origins of their morning brew. It's a testament to humanity's enduring fascination with the exotic, the rare, and the undeniably strange, even when that strangeness involves animal feces. So, the next time you sip your perfectly normal, non-poop-infused coffee, perhaps spare a thought for the civets and the lengths some people will go for a truly unique cuppa. And then, perhaps, just be grateful your local barista isn't asking for the civet special. All right, let's journey now to the vibrant, bustling street food markets of Southeast Asia, a region renowned for its incredible flavors, its aromatic spices, and its unapologetic embrace of culinary traditions that, for many Westerners, can be a full-blown existential crisis on a stick. We're talking about balut, a common street food in the Philippines and other parts of Southeast Asia, which is, to put it mildly, an experience. Because balut isn't just an egg, it's a fertilized duck embryo, and it's here to challenge everything you thought you knew about what constitutes a viable, delicious meal. So what exactly is balut? Imagine a duck egg, but instead of just being a simple yolk and white, this egg has been incubated for a specific period, typically around 14 to 21 days. During this incubation, the duck embryo inside begins to develop. What you end up with is an egg that, when cracked open, reveals a partially formed duckling, a visible embryo with distinct features like a beak, feathers, bones, and even tiny feet, all nestled alongside the yolk and a savory, rich broth. It's a spectrum of development. Some balut might have a barely discernible embryo, while others might be much more visibly duck-like. It's a biological marvel and a culinary marvel, all wrapped up in a humble eggshell. The sensory experience of eating balut is multifaceted. You typically tap a small hole in the top of the egg, slurp out the savory broth, then peel the shell and consume the rest. And when you consume the rest, you are, indeed, eating bones, feathers, and beak, alongside the rich yolk and tender meat of the partially developed duckling. Imagine the texture, the softness of the yolk, the slight crunch of tiny bones, the firmness of the embryo's flesh, the chewiness of the beak. It's a symphony of sensations that is undeniably unique. The taste is rich, savory, and intensely flavorful, often accompanied by a pinch of salt and a splash of vinegar. It's a protein-packed punch that delivers a lot of flavor in a small package. Culturally, balut holds significant importance. It's a common, affordable, and beloved snack, enjoyed by millions as a high-protein pick-me-up or a late-night treat. It's often considered an aphrodisiac, believed to boost stamina and virility, adding another layer to its cultural allure. For many Filipinos, it's not just food. It's a taste of home, a comfort food, a connection to tradition. Vendors hawk balut on street corners, and families gather to share them. It's deeply embedded in the everyday fabric of life, a testament to its enduring popularity and cultural significance. For Westerners, however, balut often falls squarely into the category of challenge food. It's the kind of dish that prompts gasps, dares, and viral YouTube videos. The visual aspect alone, the sight of a partially formed duckling staring up at you from its shell, can be a significant psychological barrier. It forces a confrontation with the origins of our food, the life cycle, and the boundaries of what we deem edible. It's a dish that polarizes, disgusts, and fascinates in equal measure, a culinary rite of passage for many adventurous eaters. Ultimately, balut is a stark reminder that one man's delicacy is another man's nightmare, and that culinary norms are profoundly shaped by culture, history, and individual upbringing. It challenges our preconceived notions of what food should look like, and forces us to confront our own biases. So, the next time you crack open a perfectly normal, unfertilized chicken egg for breakfast, spare a thought for the humble, yet undeniably shocking, balut. And perhaps, just perhaps, if you ever find yourself in a bustling Southeast Asian market, feeling particularly adventurous, you might just take a deep breath, close your eyes, and take a bite of this fertilized fowl fantasy. Just try not to think about the feathers. All right, from the embryonic poultry, let's dive headfirst into something that isn't merely dead or semi-developed, but unequivocally alive and actively trying to escape your dinner plate. We are talking about sannakji, the notorious live octopus dish of Korea, a meal so fresh it's still squirming, and so dangerous it comes with a legitimate choking hazard. This isn't just about culinary adventurousness. It's about a direct confrontation with the raw vitality of your food, a sensory experience that pushes the boundaries of perception and taste, often with a side of mild terror. The preparation of sannakji is brutally simple and disturbingly direct. A live octopus, often a small, slender one, is taken directly from the tank, quickly dismembered, usually by cutting its tentacles into bite-sized pieces, and then immediately served. And by immediately, I mean within seconds. The nerve endings and the tentacles continue to fire for several minutes after being severed, meaning the pieces of octopus writhe, twist, and suction themselves to the plate. Imagine a plate of food that looks like it's trying to crawl away from you, its various appendages curling and sticking with an almost alien intelligence. It's a truly visceral, unapologetic display of freshness. The danger, dear friends, is not an exaggeration. The suction cups on those severed tentacles retain their ability to adhere to surfaces, and that includes the inside of your mouth and throat. There have been documented cases of people choking to death on senokji, as a particularly tenacious suction cup latches onto their esophagus. This is why it's often recommended to chew the pieces thoroughly, or to apply sesame oil, which helps reduce the suction power. Imagine a meal that literally fights back, a dish that requires not just a brave palate, but a degree of careful vigilance. It's a high-stakes culinary encounter, a dance between diner and dinner that can, in rare cases, have fatal consequences. So why would anyone willingly engage in such a perilous culinary endeavor? The thrill, of course. For many, it's the ultimate challenge food, a test of bravery and an assertion of culinary daring. But beyond the thrill, it's also about the freshness. You know, without a shadow of a doubt, that this octopus is as fresh as it possibly could be. And then there's the unique texture, the slippery exterior, the firm but tender flesh, and the subtle, satisfying pop of the suction cups as you chew. It's a texture unlike anything else, an almost addictive mouthfeel for those who can get past the initial psychological hurdle. The taste is mild, subtly briny, and often enhanced with sesame oil and seeds. The ethical questions surrounding senokji are also deeply compelling. Is it cruel to eat an animal while its nerve endings are still firing, while it's still, in a very real sense, alive? While the octopus's central nervous system is in its head and the severed tentacles aren't conscious, the visible movement certainly makes for an uncomfortable contemplation for many. It forces us to confront our relationship with the animals we consume and the often convenient distance we place between the living creature and the food on our plate. Senokji obliterates that distance, placing the diner in direct, squirming contact with their meal's recent vitality. Ultimately, senokji is a dish that truly brings fresh to a whole new level of unsettling. It's a culinary experience that is both exhilarating and terrifying, a stark reminder of the vast diversity of human eating habits and the incredibly varied ways we interact with our food. So, the next time you order seafood, and it arrives perfectly still and impeccably plated, spare a thought for the brave souls wrestling with their squirming supper, and perhaps, just perhaps, be grateful for the relative predictability of your own dinner. Unless you're one of the truly adventurous, in which case, chew carefully, my friend. Chew very, very carefully. All right. From the squirming tentacles that might choke you, we're moving on to a dish that will definitely kill you if prepared incorrectly. We are talking about fugu, the infamous Japanese pufferfish, a culinary delicacy so notoriously toxic, so exquisitely dangerous, that eating it is not merely a meal, but a high-stakes gamble with your very life. This isn't just about flavor. It's about the ultimate thrill, the exquisite frisson of dining on the precipice of death, a dance with the reaper in a beautifully appointed Japanese restaurant. The poison, my friends, is no joke. Fugu contains tetrodotoxin, TTX, a neurotoxin that is vastly more potent than cyanide, about 1,200 deadlier. It's concentrated in specific organs, particularly the liver, ovaries, and intestines of the fish. There is no known antidote. If you ingest enough of it, it paralyzes your muscles, including those that control breathing, leading to a conscious, agonizing death by asphyxiation. Imagine being fully aware, completely lucid, as your body slowly shuts down, unable to move or breathe. It's a truly horrifying prospect, and it underscores the profound danger inherent in this dish. This is why fugu chefs are not merely cooks. They are highly trained, rigorously licensed individuals who undergo years of apprenticeship and demanding examinations to earn the right to prepare this deadly delicacy. They must master the intricate art of safe preparation, meticulously removing the toxic organs without contaminating the edible flesh. One slip, one moment of inattention, and a diner's life is at stake. It's a culinary profession that demands surgical precision, nerves of steel, and an intimate, life-or-death understanding of the fish's anatomy. Imagine the pressure, the intense focus, knowing that every slice of your knife is a decision between life and death. So why would anyone willingly pay exorbitant sums for a meal that could potentially kill them? The thrill, of course. For some connoisseurs, the slight tingling sensation in the lips and tongue from residual, non-lethal amounts of toxin is part of the experience. It's a subtle warning, a fleeting brush with mortality that enhances the flavor and makes the meal unforgettable. It's living on the edge, pushing boundaries, and asserting a kind of ultimate mastery over fate. It's the ultimate culinary bragging right, a story to tell, if you survive, that few others can match. It speaks to a certain segment of humanity's desire for extreme experiences, even when those experiences flirt dangerously with the Grim Reaper. The cost of fugu is, as you might expect, incredibly high. It's a very expensive meal, not just because of its rarity and the skill required to prepare it, but also because you are, in essence, paying for the chef's guarantee that you will live to see another day. A single fugu meal can cost hundreds of dollars, a testament to the perceived value of both the unique flavor and the life-preserving expertise involved. It's an investment, both monetarily and potentially fatally, in a culinary experience unlike any other. Ultimately, fugu is a potent symbol of when food is literally a gamble with your life. It's a dish that encapsulates the extreme ends of gastronomic desire, where the pursuit of unique flavor and an adrenaline rush collides with the very real threat of death. It forces us to confront the inherent risks we're willing to take for pleasure and the profound trust we place in the hands of skilled professionals. So, the next time you contemplate a daring culinary adventure, spare a thought for the fugu and its highly trained, life-saving chefs, and perhaps consider sticking to sushi that doesn't require a medical waiver. It's probably safer, and definitely less likely to require a lead-lined coffin. All right, from the potentially deadly, let's descend into the unequivocally, unarguably, biologically alive. And by alive, I mean wriggling, jumping, and actively digesting your food for you. Welcome to casu marzu, the infamous maggot-infested cheese of Sardinia, a delicacy so wild, so profoundly unsettling, and so undeniably alive that it's actually illegal for sale in many places. Because apparently, some people prefer their cheese with a side of active insect larvae and a distinct aroma of profound fermentation. The process of creating casu marzu is not for the faint of heart or for those with a delicate stomach. It begins with a traditional Sardinian pecorino cheese. This cheese is then deliberately left out, exposed to the elements, specifically to cheese flies, Piophila casi. The female flies, attracted by the fermenting milk, lay their eggs in the cracks of the cheese. This is not an accident. It is a critical, intentional step in the cheese-making process. Imagine leaving out a perfectly good cheese, specifically inviting flies to lay their eggs in it, knowing what horrors will soon emerge. It's a leap of faith, or perhaps a plunge into profound culinary madness. Soon enough, the larvae hatch. And these tiny, squirming maggots are the true artisans of kazumarzu. As they munch and wriggle their way through the cheese, their digestive enzymes break down the fats in the pecorino, fermenting it to an extreme degree. This process softens the cheese, transforming its texture into something incredibly creamy and almost liquid. It also imparts a distinct, pungent flavor profile, described as intensely rich, earthy, and with a powerful aftertaste. Imagine the sheer, relentless work of thousands of tiny maggots turning a solid cheese into a creamy, almost liquid, profoundly aromatic mass. It's a truly active fermentation. The consumption of kazumarzu is, shall we say, an experience. You can eat it with or without the maggots, though the traditional way is with them. And here's the kicker. When disturbed, these maggots are known to jump. They can launch themselves several inches into the air, meaning diners often have to shield their eyes while eating to avoid a direct, squirming hit. Imagine a spoonful of cheese and then a sudden, unexpected leap of its inhabitants towards your face. It's a culinary performance, a gastronomical rodeo, where you're not just eating cheese, you're engaging in a minor battle with its highly mobile residents. The legality of kazumarzu is, predictably, a thorny issue. Due to European Union food hygiene regulations concerning live insects in food, it is currently illegal for commercial sale. This hasn't, however, stopped its production and consumption as a traditional, homemade food in Sardinia, often shared amongst friends and family. It's a powerful example of local culinary traditions stubbornly resisting official regulations, a testament to the deep cultural roots of this bizarre delicacy. It's a cheese that truly comes alive, both literally and metaphorically, in its defiance of modern food safety standards. Ultimately, kazumarzu is a cheese that challenges every single one of your preconceived notions about food, hygiene, and edibility. It's a testament to the incredible diversity of human palates and the often unsettling lengths people will go to in pursuit of unique flavors and deeply embedded traditions. So, the next time you reach for a perfectly safe, hygienically packaged wedge of cheddar, spare a thought for the brave, or perhaps foolhardy, Sardinians enjoying their maggot-infested masterpiece. And perhaps, just perhaps, be profoundly grateful for cheese that doesn't actively try to jump into your eye. It's a small but significant comfort. All right, from the lively maggots, let's pivot to something that, while no longer squirming, packs an olfactory punch so potent, so profoundly offensive, it can clear a room faster than a fire alarm. We are talking about surströmming, the infamous fermented Baltic Sea herring of Sweden, a culinary experience so notorious for its stench that airlines have banned it and people often eat it wearing gas masks. Because, apparently, some cultures believe that the apex of deliciousness smells suspiciously like rotting garbage, sewage, and perhaps a dead body left in the sun for a week. Let's be blunt about the smell. Surströmming is notorious for its potent, offensive odor. It's not just a little funky, it's an all-out assault on your olfactory senses. Descriptions range from rotting garbage and sewage to feces and rancid butter. Imagine opening a can of something so powerfully putrid, so incredibly noxious that it makes your eyes water, your stomach churn, and your brain scream, "Get away!" It's a smell that clings, permeates, and irrevocably alters the very atmosphere around it. For many, it's a smell that simply cannot be overcome, a barrier to entry so profound it makes even the bravest foodie hesitate. The fermentation process is, of course, the culprit behind this aromatic catastrophe. The Baltic Sea herring are caught in the spring, gutted, but the roe is often left in for flavor, then brined in a strong salt solution for a couple of months. This allows specific enzymes and bacteria to work their magic, creating acids, hydrogen sulfide, and a host of other pungent compounds. The fermentation is allowed to continue even after the fish are packed into cans, which causes the cans to bulge dramatically due to the gas buildup. Imagine picking up a bulging, pressurized can of fish, knowing that inside lies a biological time bomb of smell. It's a process that is both ancient and, to our modern noses, profoundly alarming. Given its infamous odor, the consumption of surströmming is often a ritual, usually performed outdoors or in a well-ventilated area that you don't particularly care about smelling like a landfill for the next week. The can is typically opened submerged in water to mitigate the explosive release of gas and stench. It's traditionally eaten with thin, unleavened bread, tunnbröd, boiled potatoes, raw onion, and sometimes sour cream and dill. Imagine a group of people gathered cautiously around a table, their faces probably contorted in a mixture of anticipation and dread, carefully preparing their stinking herring, all while trying not to gag. It's a communal experience, a shared ordeal, and a perverse badge of honor. And for those who dare, what does it actually taste like? Despite the truly horrifying smell, devotees describe the taste as salty, pungent, savory, and surprisingly complex, with a rich umami depth. The acidity from the fermentation balances the richness of the fish. It's often compared to strong cheese, but with an undeniably fishy, fermented kick. It's a taste that, for its adherents, is deeply satisfying and uniquely Swedish. Imagine overcoming the initial shock of the smell, taking a bite, and discovering a flavor that, while intense, is oddly compelling. It's a testament to the fact that our senses can be profoundly tricked, and that taste is far more complex than just good or bad. Surströmming is more than just a fermented fish. It's a culinary experience designed to repel, yet deeply cherished by its devotees. It's a symbol of Swedish resilience, tradition, and a certain stubborn pride in embracing challenging flavors. It reminds us that what one culture deems an abomination, another cherishes as a national dish. So, the next time you complain about the smell of your gym socks or your roommate's questionable cooking, spare a thought for the surströmming and the brave souls who willingly expose themselves to its profound, undeniable stench. And perhaps be profoundly grateful that your local supermarket doesn't stock bulging cans of fermented herring. Unless, of course, you're looking for the ultimate conversation starter or a truly effective way to clear out unwanted guests. All right, from the Swedish stink bomb, let's cross the frosty waters to Iceland, a land of fire and ice, Viking sagas, and another culinary horror show that makes surströmming smell like a delicate bouquet of roses. We are talking about hakar, the infamous fermented Greenland shark or basking shark, a dish so profoundly challenging, so utterly putrid, that even the most adventurous eaters often struggle to keep it down. Because apparently, the only way to eat a certain kind of poisonous shark is to let it rot for months and then chew its ammonia-soaked flesh with a profound sense of historical duty. The problem, my friends, begins with the shark itself. Greenland sharks and basking sharks are not your typical cod or salmon. If eaten fresh, their flesh is poisonous due to extremely high levels of uric acid and trimethylamine oxide. These compounds act as a natural antifreeze, allowing the sharks to survive in freezing Arctic waters, but they are highly toxic to humans, causing severe gastrointestinal distress and neurological symptoms, effectively getting you shark drunk. So eating one fresh is a very bad idea indeed. The solution, developed by resourceful and probably very hungry Vikings centuries ago, is where the true culinary madness begins. You can't just cook out the toxins. They need to be broken down through a very specific and deeply unpleasant fermentation process. The shark meat is first buried in a shallow, gravelly pit, often with stones placed on top to press out the toxic fluids. It's left there for 6 to 12 weeks, allowing the flesh to ferment and decompose, breaking down those nasty compounds. Imagine a large, rotting shark carcass slowly oozing toxic fluids into the ground, all while you wait patiently for it to become edible. After its subterranean spa treatment, the shark is then exhumed, cut into strips, and hung to dry for several months in an open-sided shed exposed to the elements. During this drying period, a thick brown crust forms on the outside, which is eventually removed before consumption. The entire process transforms the fresh, toxic shark into a chewy, powerfully pungent, and profoundly ammonia-rich delicacy. Imagine a cold, windy shed full of slowly drying shark meat, emitting a smell so powerful it probably strips paint off nearby houses. It's an artisanal process, if your idea of artisan involves decomposing shark. And the taste? Oh, the taste. Prepare yourself. Hakar is notorious for its strong ammonia flavor, often described as similar to a badly maintained public toilet or profoundly old cheese that's gone very, very wrong. It has a chewy, almost rubbery texture and a pungent, fishy aftertaste that lingers long after you've swallowed. Anthony Bourdain, the fearless culinary adventurer, famously called it the single worst, most disgusting, and terrible-tasting thing I have ever eaten. Even those who grow up with it admit it's a powerful flavor, usually accompanied by a shot of ice-cold Brennivine, the Icelandic schnapps, to wash down the profound awfulness. Culturally, hakkarl is more than just a food. It's a national dish, a Viking-era survival food that has persisted for centuries. It represents resilience, resourcefulness, and a connection to a harsh, unforgiving landscape. It's served at traditional Icelandic festivals and is often offered to tourists as a kind of culinary rite of passage, a challenge to prove your adventurous spirit or your profound lack of sense. It's a dish that embodies a waste not, want not ethos taken to its most extreme and profoundly aromatic conclusion. Ultimately, hakkarl is a testament to when the only way to eat something is to make it actively worse. It's a powerful reminder of how human ingenuity, driven by the stark necessity of survival, can transform the poisonous into the palatable, even if the result challenges every single one of your modern culinary sensibilities. So, the next time you complain about a slightly fishy piece of sushi, spare a thought for the rotten shark of Iceland and the brave souls who willingly chew on its ammonia-soaked flesh. And perhaps, just perhaps, be profoundly grateful for food that doesn't actively require months of decomposition to be safe. Your nose and your stomach will thank you for it. All right, from the rotten shark, let's travel to China, a land of ancient wisdom, rich culinary traditions, and a truly unique approach to egg preservation that results in a dish both revered and reviled. We're talking about century eggs, also known as pidan, thousand-year eggs, or millennium eggs. These aren't just preserved eggs. They are a timeless Chinese treasure, a culinary marvel that transforms a humble duck or chicken egg into something visually alien, aromatically challenging, and profoundly delicious to those with an acquired taste. Because, apparently, some of the best things in life take weeks or months to age and involve a distinct whiff of sulfur and ammonia. The process of creating century eggs is an ancient method of preservation that predates refrigeration by centuries. It involves coating duck, chicken, or quail eggs in a carefully prepared mixture of clay, ash, salt, quicklime, and rice hulls. These coated eggs are then left to cure for weeks or even months, depending on the desired outcome and the specific recipe. The alkaline mixture slowly raises the pH of the egg, initiating a fascinating chemical transformation. Imagine a humble egg slowly undergoing a profound metamorphosis, shrouded in a protective, earthy casing, waiting for its alien rebirth. It's a scientific marvel disguised as a culinary tradition. During this extended preservation period, the egg undergoes a truly dramatic transformation, both in appearance and texture. The yolk, originally a vibrant yellow, turns into a dark green or gray, developing a creamy, almost custard-like consistency. The egg white, initially clear, becomes a translucent dark brown jelly, often adorned with beautiful pine tree-like patterns, earning them the nickname pine flower eggs. Imagine cracking open an egg and finding not the familiar white and yellow, but a dark, ethereal jelly and a greenish, pungent yolk. It's a visual shock, an alien egg that looks like it belongs on another planet, not on your dinner plate. And then there's the smell. Oh, the smell. Century eggs are notorious for their distinct aroma, which can be quite off-putting to the uninitiated. It's often described as a strong ammonia and sulfur smell, reminiscent of a barnyard or even old socks. This pungent aroma is a natural byproduct of the chemical transformation, a sign that the preservation process has worked its magic. Imagine encountering this powerful scent for the first time, your nose wrinkling in confusion and perhaps disgust. For those who love them, however, the smell is simply part of the experience, a prelude to the rich, complex flavors within. And the taste? For those who brave the aroma and the alien appearance, the taste of century eggs is unique and surprisingly complex. The yolk is often described as salty, earthy, and sometimes with a cheese-like flavor, or even a hint of smoky umami. The jelly-like white is firm, smooth, and has a more subtle, slightly briny taste. They are often eaten as a simple appetizer, sliced and served with soy sauce, ginger, and chili, or incorporated into more elaborate dishes like congee. Imagine a flavor profile so utterly distinct, so profoundly different from a fresh egg, that it redefines your understanding of what an egg can be. Ultimately, century eggs are an ancient method of preservation that produces a truly alien egg, a culinary masterpiece of transformation and patience. They stand as a testament to humanity's ingenious methods of food preservation, born from necessity and elevated into a cultural delicacy. So the next time you encounter a century egg, don't just dismiss it based on its appearance or initial aroma. Instead, appreciate it for its profound history, its fascinating chemistry, and the unique sensory journey it offers. And perhaps, just perhaps, if you're feeling brave, you might just take a bite of this timeless Chinese treasure. Just be sure to have some fresh ginger nearby. All right, from the ancient, pungent eggs of China, let's whisk ourselves away to the wild, windswept highlands of Scotland, a land of kilts, bagpipes, and a national dish so famously gross to outsiders, yet so profoundly beloved by its people, it's become a symbol of national identity. We are talking about haggis, the Scottish stomach stuffer, a hearty, savory dish that embodies a true waste-not ethos and a profound cultural pride, even if its ingredients list sounds like something from a particularly grim fairy tale. Let's be honest about the ingredients, because that's usually where most people hit their psychological wall. Haggis is traditionally made from sheep's pluck. That's the heart, liver, and lungs of a sheep, all minced together. To this meaty mixture, oatmeal, chopped onion, suet, animal fat, and a generous blend of spices are added. Imagine a rich, savory, slightly gamey internal organ blend, perfectly seasoned, and given a hearty, starchy texture from the oats. It's a powerhouse of flavor and nutrition, designed to warm the belly and fortify the spirit against the notoriously cold Scottish climate. And then there's the casing. Traditionally, and most famously, this savory mixture is boiled inside a sheep's stomach. Yes, the actual stomach. Imagine a culinary tradition where the very organ that held the sheep's previous meals becomes the vessel for your own. Now, in modern times, haggis is often encased in artificial sausage casings, making it a bit less visually challenging. But the traditional method, while certainly intimidating, is a testament to the waste not, want not philosophy. Every part of the animal was used, honored, and transformed into a delicious meal. It's a truly resourceful approach to sustenance. The perception of haggis is fascinatingly bifurcated. For outsiders, particularly those unaccustomed to offal, it's often seen as grotesque, a monstrous beastie whose very description elicits shudders and jokes. It's the ultimate fear factor food for many tourists, a dare to prove your culinary courage. Yet, for Scots, it is a beloved national dish, a source of immense pride, and a comfort food that evokes warmth, tradition, and home. It's served at family gatherings, pubs, and famously at burn suppers around the world. It's a profound example of how cultural context utterly shapes our perception of food. The Burn Supper, held annually on January 25th to celebrate the life and poetry of Robert Burns, features the ceremonial address to a haggis. Imagine a formal dinner, people dressed in tartan, a piper leading the haggis into the room, and then a passionate, dramatic recitation of Burns' poem, where the haggis is lauded as great chieftain of the pudding race. It's a moment of profound cultural pride, a celebration of a dish that embodies the resilience and spirit of Scotland. It elevates the humble stomach stuffer to a position of poetic reverence, transforming it from mere food into a symbol. Ultimately, haggis is a hearty, savory dish that embodies a waste-not ethos and a rich cultural heritage. It's a powerful reminder that our judgments about food are often deeply prejudiced by our own cultural backgrounds and a profound lack of understanding. So, the next time you encounter a haggis, whether on a plate or in a poem, don't just dismiss it as gross. Instead, appreciate it for its history, its cultural significance, and the sheer ingenuity of its creation. And perhaps, just perhaps, if you're feeling brave, you might just take a bite of this Scottish stomach stuffer. You might find yourself surprisingly delighted. Or, you might just stick to your perfectly normal, non-organ-filled sausages. No judgment here. All right, let's pivot from traditional, if challenging, national dishes to a truly dark and deeply unsettling chapter in human eating habits: the consumption of rare, exotic, and often critically endangered animals. This isn't about survival, cultural tradition, or even adventurous eating in the conventional sense. This is about pure, unadulterated human selfishness, misguided superstition, and the profound, destructive desire for status, often at the cost of driving magnificent creatures to the brink of extinction. Welcome to the Last Supper of rhinos, tigers, and pangolins, a culinary practice that is less about food and more about a tragic demonstration of human ignorance and greed. At the forefront of this grim menu is rhino horn. Despite being scientifically proven to be nothing more than keratin, the same material as your fingernails, rhino horn is tragically prized in some cultures, particularly in parts of Asia, for perceived medicinal benefits. It's ground into powder and consumed, believed to cure everything from fevers and hangovers to cancer, and even act as an aphrodisiac. Imagine a majestic, ancient creature being slaughtered, its horn hacked off, all for a fraudulent cure that is as effective as chewing your own fingernails. The sheer absurdity of it is infuriating, a direct link between profound ignorance and the decimation of a species. Equally tragic is the use of tiger bones and tiger penis in traditional medicine. Beliefs in their power to cure ailments, impart strength, or enhance virility have pushed these magnificent predators to the very edge of existence. Imagine poaching a tiger, a creature of unparalleled beauty and power, reducing it to its bones and organs, all for a concoction that has no scientific basis for its claims. The demand for these products fuels an illegal wildlife trade worth billions, directly contributing to the rapid decline of tiger populations across Asia. It's a stark, brutal example of how superstition, combined with a perverse sense of medicinal efficacy, can have devastating consequences for biodiversity. And then there's the pangolin. You might not have heard of it, but this shy, scaly mammal holds the dubious distinction of being the most trafficked animal in the world. Its scales, again made of keratin, are used in traditional medicine, believed to cure various ailments, despite zero scientific evidence. Its meat is also considered a delicacy in some cultures, served as a trophy meal. Imagine a creature so unique, so harmless, being systematically hunted and consumed, its entire species being wiped out, simply because of a misguided belief in its magical properties and a desire for an exotic, rare dish. It's a heartbreaking testament to human folly and the devastating impact of our choices. These acts often fall into the category of the trophy meal, eating something rare, something endangered, simply because you can afford to, regardless of the consequences for the species or the planet. It's a perverse display of wealth and power, a status symbol that screams, "I am so rich, I can literally eat the last of a species, and there's nothing anyone can do about it." It's a dark chapter in human selfishness and ignorance, a profound failure of empathy and foresight that continues to drive species towards extinction. It's a culinary flex that leaves a bitter taste in the mouth of anyone with a conscience. Ultimately, the consumption of endangered species for perceived medicinal benefits or status is a profoundly tragic and infuriating aspect of human eating habits. It highlights the devastating intersection of ignorance, superstition, greed, and a fundamental disrespect for the natural world. It reminds us that our choices, particularly our culinary choices, have far-reaching ethical and ecological consequences. So the next time you consider an exotic or rare dish, spare a thought for the rhinos, tigers, pangolins, and countless other creatures pushed to the brink by human consumption. And perhaps choose a meal that doesn't contribute to the tragic, irreversible loss of Earth's magnificent biodiversity. Some things, no matter how rare or expensive, are simply not worth consuming. All right. From the ancient, tragic consumption of endangered species, let's fast forward to the bewildering landscape of modern wellness trends, where ancient traditions collide with New Age dogma, and the pursuit of health can lead to some truly unconventional and profoundly intimate dietary choices. We're talking about placentophagy, the practice of eating the placenta, often repackaged as placenta smoothies or placenta capsules, a growing trend among some mothers in Western cultures. Because apparently, the organ that sustained life for 9 months is now the ultimate postpartum superfood. The trend, while seemingly new and somewhat shocking in Western cultures, has roots in animal kingdom behavior, most mammals eat their placenta, and some historical human practices, although its widespread adoption in modern Western society is a relatively recent phenomenon. Proponents, often driven by anecdotal evidence and social media trends, believe it offers a host of postpartum benefits. Imagine a new mother, exhausted and overwhelmed, presented with the option of consuming her own placenta, told it's the key to recovery and well-being. It's a powerful appeal, tapping into vulnerability and the profound desire for a smooth, healthy postpartum experience. The preparation methods for human placenta are, as you might imagine, varied and incredibly niche. For those who can stomach the raw form, it might be blended into a placenta smoothie with fruit and other ingredients, a full-body nutrient shot immediately after birth. More commonly, for those who prefer discretion and a less visceral experience, the placenta is often dehydrated, ground into a powder, and then encapsulated. These placenta capsules can then be taken daily, much like any other vitamin supplement. Some even opt to cook and eat portions of the placenta, incorporating it into dishes like lasagna or stir-fries, though this is far less common. Imagine a postpartum lasagna, infused with the very organ that housed your child. It's a culinary boundary pusher, to say the least. The supposed benefits are a significant driver of this trend. Advocates claim that consuming the placenta can boost energy levels, prevent postpartum depression, increase milk production, and even replenish lost iron. These claims often lean on a combination of traditional wisdom, anecdotal accounts, and a general belief in the natural power of the body. However, and this is crucial, rigorous scientific studies have largely failed to substantiate these claims. Major medical organizations, including the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, have stated there's no scientific evidence of benefit and potential risks. It's a potent example of a trend driven by belief and desire rather than scientific evidence. While human placentophagy is not a widespread historical practice in most cultures, animal placentophagy is common and entirely natural. This biological precedent is often cited by proponents as a reason to normalize the practice for humans. However, the human cultural context is very different, and the ethical considerations around processing and consuming human tissue are complex. There are also potential risks, including bacterial or viral infections, if the placenta is not handled and processed hygienically. Imagine consuming a potentially contaminated product, believing it to be a health elixir. Ultimately, placenta smoothies and capsules represent a fascinating intersection of modern wellness trends and deeply unconventional territory. It's a practice that pushes the boundaries of what we consider food, what we deem acceptable, and how we define health. So, the next time you encounter a discussion about superfoods or the latest health trend, spare a thought for the humble placenta, now transformed from a vital biological organ into a controversial dietary supplement. And perhaps, just perhaps, be grateful that your preferred postpartum recovery plan doesn't involve consuming your own birth-related organ. Or maybe it does. To each their own, I suppose, in the wonderfully weird world of modern eating. All right, from the deeply personal and controversial, let's shift to a culinary realm that, for many Westerners, is pure, unadulterated ick factor, yet for billions across the globe represents a nutritious, delicious, and utterly normal source of sustenance. We're talking about entomophagy, the eating of insects, and its potential future as a sustainable protein source. From crispy fried tarantulas to spiced grasshoppers, prepare to confront your deepest invertebrate prejudices, because bugs are on the menu, and they might just be here to stay. Let's start with the big, hairy, eight-legged elephant in the room, Cambodian fried tarantulas. This isn't a delicacy born of ancient luxury. It's a post-Khmer Rouge survival food that, through sheer necessity, transformed into a celebrated delicacy. During the brutal famine of the Khmer Rouge regime, people were forced to eat anything to survive, and tarantulas, found in abundance in burrows, became a vital protein source. Today, in towns like Squan, often called Spiderville, deep-fried tarantulas are a popular street food. Imagine a large, hairy spider, deep-fried until crispy, seasoned with garlic and salt. The legs are crunchy, the body a bit softer, with a rich, gamey, slightly nutty flavor. It's an acquired taste, certainly, but a taste born of profound resilience. Across the globe, in Mexico, you'll find chapulines, grasshoppers, as a popular and beloved snack. These aren't just any grasshoppers. They're often toasted or fried, seasoned with chili, lime, and garlic, and sold by vendors as a crunchy, protein-rich treat. They're eaten plain, in tacos, or as a garnish. Imagine a bowl of tiny, crunchy, spicy critters, offering a burst of flavor and a satisfying texture. For Mexicans, it's a traditional food, a delicious part of their culinary heritage, completely devoid of the ick factor that often plagues Western perceptions. It's a vibrant, flavorful example of how insects can be a delightful and integral part of a cuisine. And then there are the witchetty grubs of Australia, a traditional food for Indigenous Australians. These large, plump, protein-rich larvae are found in the roots of certain trees. They can be eaten raw, where they apparently have a nutty, almond-like flavor, or lightly cooked over hot coals, which crisps the skin and makes the inside taste a bit like scrambled eggs or peanut butter. Imagine pulling a fat, white grub from the ground, knowing it's a vital source of protein and fat in a harsh environment. It's a survival food, a delicacy, and a profound connection to the land and ancient traditions. The ick factor for Westerners is undeniable. For many, the very thought of eating an insect triggers a primal repulsion, a learned aversion that's hard to shake. We associate bugs with dirt, disease, and unpleasantness, not with deliciousness. But this aversion is largely cultural, a product of our agricultural abundance and our separation from the natural food chain. For 2 billion people worldwide, insects are a regular part of their diet, and for good reason. They are incredibly nutritious, packed with protein, healthy fats, vitamins, and minerals. Compared to livestock, insects require far less land, water, and feed, and produce significantly fewer greenhouse gases, making them a highly sustainable protein source. Could insects then be the future of protein? As the global population grows and concerns about climate change and food security intensify, entomophagy is increasingly being explored as a viable, sustainable solution. From cricket flour protein bars to mealworm burgers, innovative food companies are trying to overcome the ick factor through processing and clever marketing. Will they succeed, or will insects forever remain a strange food, embraced by some, reviled by others? It's a fascinating question, and one that challenges our deepest culinary prejudices. Ultimately, fried tarantulas and insect delicacies remind us that food is a remarkably expansive category, and our perceptions are deeply cultural. So the next time you squash a spider or swat a grasshopper, spare a thought for its potential as a protein-rich snack. And perhaps, just perhaps, if you're feeling truly adventurous, you might just open your mind and your mouth to the possibility of bugs on the menu. They might just be more delicious and more sustainable than you ever imagined. Just try not to think about their tiny legs. All right, from the sustainable crunch of insects, let's wade into a dietary trend that, for many, is the ultimate culinary rebellion. A rejection of centuries of cooking, and a profound leap of faith into the bacterial unknown. We're talking about the cult of raw meat, specifically extreme raw food diets that champion the consumption of uncooked animal products. This isn't just a preference. For its adherents, it's an almost religious dogma, a belief system that promises miraculous health benefits, often in defiance of basic food safety science. At the extreme end of this spectrum is the carnivore diet, where followers consume only animal products, meat, organs, eggs, and some dairy, often raw or very lightly cooked. The belief system behind this diet is complex and often deeply personal. Proponents claim a vast array of benefits: improved digestion, increased energy, enhanced mental clarity, weight loss, and even reversal of chronic diseases. They often argue that humans are fundamentally carnivores, and that cooking food destroys vital enzymes and nutrients, making us less healthy. Imagine rejecting every fruit, vegetable, and grain, and embracing a diet solely composed of uncooked animal flesh, convinced it holds the key to optimal health. It's a profound dietary shift, often bordering on an identity. The beliefs underpinning the raw meat diet are often passionate, but unfortunately, largely unscientific. While some ancestral populations certainly ate raw meat, they did so under very specific circumstances, from freshly killed animals, in environments where parasitic loads might have been lower, and with a significantly shorter lifespan to demonstrate long-term health effects. Modern proponents often cherry-pick historical examples while ignoring the vast body of scientific evidence regarding foodborne pathogens. The claims of destroyed enzymes and toxins from cooking are generally not supported by mainstream nutritional science. It's a fascinating example of how dietary choices can become an almost religious adherence to unproven or actively disproven theories. The risks associated with raw meat consumption are, predictably, substantial. Parasites, bacterial infections such as E. coli, Salmonella, Listeria, and Campylobacter, and viral pathogens are common in raw meat. Cooking meat to a safe internal temperature is one of humanity's greatest innovations, precisely because it kills these dangerous microorganisms. Consuming raw meat significantly increases your risk of food poisoning, which can range from unpleasant gastrointestinal distress to severe illness, hospitalization, or even death. Imagine willingly exposing yourself to these risks, convinced that the benefits outweigh the very real dangers. It's a high-stakes gamble with your gut health. However, it's worth noting the historical precedent. Indigenous peoples around the world, particularly in Arctic regions like the Inuit, have traditionally consumed raw meat and organs. The diet of the Inuit, for example, is rich in raw seal, whale, and fish, providing essential vitamins, like vitamin C, which is found in fresh organ meat that would otherwise be lacking in their environment. But this is a very specific context, often involving freshly killed animals and traditional methods of preparation and storage. It's a far cry from picking up a package of ground beef from a modern supermarket and eating it raw. The nuances of context are critical here. Ultimately, the cult of raw meat is a stark reminder of when dietary choices become an almost religious adherence to unproven theories, often with significant health risks. It highlights humanity's endless quest for optimal health and the willingness of some to challenge conventional wisdom, even when that wisdom is backed by centuries of science and practical experience. So, the next time you see someone enthusiastically munching on a raw steak, spare a thought for the potential pathogens and perhaps be profoundly grateful for the existence of fire and the culinary art of cooking. Your digestive system and your local emergency room will thank you for it. All right, from the rather unappetizing bacterial roulette of raw meat, let's dive into a culinary realm so niche, so profoundly controversial, and so undeniably intimate, it makes everything else we've discussed seem almost tame. We're talking about human breast milk cheese. Yes, you heard that correctly. This isn't a survival food or an ancient tradition or even a widely adopted wellness trend. This is the ultimate artisanal oddity, an experimental culinary endeavor that exists at the farthest reaches of gastronomical experimentation, pushing boundaries and questioning the very definition of food in ways that make most people profoundly uncomfortable. The concept itself is simple enough. If cow's milk makes cheese, why not human milk? Chefs, food enthusiasts, and curious individuals have, in recent years, experimented with human breast milk, transforming it into various dairy products. This isn't a large-scale industry. It's a truly niche, often one-off, boundary-pushing area of gastronomy. Imagine a chef, perhaps a little too bored with conventional ingredients, suddenly having an epiphany. What if human cheese? It's a thought experiment brought to unsettling, edible life. The experiments have gone beyond just cheese. We've seen reports of human breast milk ice cream, human milk yogurt, and various other dairy-based creations. Imagine a scoop of ice cream, creamy and sweet, only to be told its primary ingredient is human breast milk? For some, it's an intriguing novelty, a playful subversion of culinary norms. For most, it's a step too far, venturing into territory that is simply too personal, too primal, and too undeniably weird. It's a fascinating example of how far some are willing to go in the search for novelty and extreme artisanal experiences. However, the ethical considerations surrounding human breast milk as a food ingredient are complex and significant. First, there's the sourcing. Where does the milk come from? Is it donated? Paid for? What are the implications of commercializing human bodily fluids? Then there's the safety aspect. Unlike pasteurized cow's milk, human breast milk, if not screened and handled properly, can transmit diseases. What measures are taken to ensure the milk is pathogen-free? And perhaps most profoundly, there's the sheer ick factor for many. For most people, breast milk is associated with infants, with nurturing, and with a very specific, intimate bond. To see it commodified and turned into a novelty food product can feel profoundly unsettling, even transgressive. It's a boundary-pushing endeavor that questions the very definition of food. Is food simply anything that provides nourishment, or does it also have cultural, social, and psychological boundaries? When does the search for novelty cross into the profoundly uncomfortable, or even the ethically questionable? Human breast milk cheese forces us to confront these uncomfortable questions, challenging our ingrained notions of what is and isn't appropriate for consumption. It highlights the arbitrary nature of our culinary taboos and the powerful psychological impact of our food choices. Ultimately, human breast milk cheese stands as the ultimate artisanal oddity, a truly niche and controversial area of gastronomy. It's a testament to humanity's endless curiosity, our desire to experiment, and our willingness to challenge even the most deeply ingrained cultural norms. So, the next time you consider an exotic cheese board, spare a thought for the human breast milk variety. And perhaps, just perhaps, be profoundly grateful for the relative simplicity of cow's, goat's, or sheep's milk cheese. It's a lot less likely to spark an existential debate at your next dinner party, and probably safer, too. All right, from the biologically intimate, let's fast forward to a future that's hurtling towards us at an alarming rate. A world where food isn't just grown in fields, but in labs, printed by machines and tailored to your very DNA. We are talking about designer food and frankenmeat, the next frontier of strange eating, where science, technology, and ethics collide to redefine what it means to put sustenance in your body. Get ready for a glimpse into a future that's both incredibly efficient, potentially sustainable, and profoundly, existentially unsettling. First up, cultured meat, or lab-grown meat. Imagine a hamburger, not from a cow that once roamed a pasture, but from a small sample of animal cells, grown and multiplied in a bioreactor in a lab. No animal slaughter, no massive carbon footprint, just a delicious, ethically sound piece of meat. Is it still meat? That's the multi-billion-dollar question. Proponents argue it's the solution to hunger, environmental destruction, and animal welfare concerns. Imagine a world where meat consumption doesn't come with the ethical baggage of animal farming. It's a powerful vision, but for many, the unnatural factor remains a significant hurdle, a mental block against consuming something that never saw the light of day. The ethical dilemma is immense. On one hand, cultured meat offers a compelling vision of solving global hunger and drastically reducing the environmental impact of livestock farming. It promises guilt-free meat, an end to factory farming, and a more sustainable future. On the other hand, There's the instinctive unease, the feeling that something fundamentally unnatural is at play. Is it truly meat if it hasn't lived and breathed? Does it strip away a vital connection to nature? These aren't easy questions, and they highlight the profound societal adjustments that will be required to embrace such a radical culinary shift. It's a clash between pragmatism and primal instinct. Beyond whole cultured meat, we're also moving into the realm of synthetic ingredients. Think flavor compounds designed to perfectly replicate the taste of something rare or expensive without any of the actual ingredients. Artificial sweeteners that trick your brain into thinking it's eating sugar. And the relentless quest for perfect replicants. Flavors that are indistinguishable from the real thing, but assembled from scratch in a lab. Imagine a synthetic steak that tastes exactly like a prime rib, but was never part of an animal. It's the ultimate illusion, a culinary matrix where taste is divorced from its natural origins. And the future promises personalized nutrition, diets tailored precisely to your DNA, your microbiome, and your unique physiological needs. This will likely involve strange powders, bespoke nutrient shakes, and perhaps even pills that deliver a customized dose of everything your body requires. Imagine a future where you don't eat a varied diet, but rather consume a scientifically optimized, possibly tasteless, sludge designed specifically for you. It's efficient, precise, and profoundly utilitarian, but perhaps also utterly devoid of the joy and cultural significance of shared meals. Ultimately, the next frontier of weirdness is upon us. Will we one day eat printer-generated food extruded from a cartridge based on a digital recipe? Will our children view a steak from a once-living cow with the same disgust we reserve for maggot cheese? The future of food is likely to be a strange, fascinating, and often uncomfortable blend of scientific marvel and existential questioning. So, the next time you bite into a perfectly normal, recognizable meal, spare a thought for the lab-grown steaks, the synthetic flavors, and the personalized nutrient powders of tomorrow. And perhaps, just perhaps, appreciate the glorious, messy, and wonderfully natural absurdity of eating something that once grew in the dirt or ran across a field. It might be a luxury sooner than you think. All right, from the speculative future, let's swing back to the utterly bizarre present, a digital landscape where food has been weaponized, not for survival, but for entertainment, ego, and the insatiable algorithms of the internet. We are talking about the food challenge phenomenon, a modern form of masochism where people willingly subject themselves to unimaginable culinary ordeals, all for the fleeting glory of viral content. Because apparently nothing says I'm interesting like eating a ghost pepper that makes you question all your life choices, or consuming 50 hot dogs in 10 minutes. The rise of YouTube challenges has fundamentally transformed our relationship with food. It's no longer just about nourishment or pleasure. It's a prop for virality, a test of endurance, and a spectacle of self-inflicted gastronomic pain. Imagine content creators eating impossible amounts of food, gallon challenges, 10,000 calorie challenges, entire fast food menus devoured in one sitting. Or the rise of extremely spicy food challenges, where people willingly consume ghost peppers, Carolina Reapers, or other capsaicin-laced horrors, enduring agonizing pain for internet views. And then there are the disgusting combination challenges, where people mix truly vile ingredients together, all for the delighted and often disgusted screams of their audience. This phenomenon is also deeply intertwined with competitive eating, a surprisingly popular sport where individuals push the absolute limits of human consumption. From the famous Nathan's hot dog eating contest, where contestants devour dozens of hot dogs and buns in mere minutes, to other, lesser-known competitions involving brain sandwiches, oysters, or even butter, competitive eating transforms a basic biological function into a feat of extreme endurance. Imagine the sheer physical toll, the training regimes, and the profound discomfort involved in force-feeding yourself far beyond the point of satiety, all for a trophy and a moment of glory. The ghost pepper craze is perhaps the most vivid example of this modern masochism. People willingly consume peppers that register millions on the Scoville scale, experiencing intense burning sensations, tears, snot, vomiting, and often hours of gastrointestinal distress. And why? For the internet glory? For the views? For the bragging rights? For the momentary thrill of pushing their bodies to the absolute limit of pain. It's a bizarre form of self-flagellation, a performance of suffering that, for some, is undeniably captivating. Imagine choosing to experience profound physical agony, not out of necessity, but for clicks and likes. Ultimately, the food challenge phenomenon is a modern form of strange eating, driven by ego, algorithms, and a profound desire for attention. It transforms food from a source of life and pleasure into a tool for spectacle, a prop for viral content, and a test of endurance that often veers into the absurd and the genuinely dangerous. So the next time you scroll through your feed and see someone choking down a bucket of instant noodles or weeping through a super hot chili, spare a thought for the profound weirdness of our digital age. And perhaps, just perhaps, be grateful that your own meals are largely consumed in peace, comfort, and without the constant pressure to perform gastronomic self-harm for an online audience. It's a luxury we often take for granted. All right, from the intentional, often performative strangeness of food challenges, let's pivot to a type of strange eating that is far less glamorous, far more serious, and often deeply tragic. We are talking about pica, a medical condition where individuals crave and consume non-food items. This isn't about daring culinary adventure or cultural delicacy or even survival in the traditional sense. This is about a genuine, often profound breakdown in the body's signaling system, a complex interplay between physical deficiency and mental health. It's a stark, often heartbreaking contrast to the intentional weirdness we've explored, highlighting the profound and sometimes disturbing relationship between body and mind. The definition of pica is simple yet unsettling: the persistent eating of non-nutritive, non-food substances for a period of at least 1 month, inappropriate to the developmental level of the individual and not part of a culturally sanctioned practice. Imagine an individual uncontrollably craving and consuming things like ice, pagophagia, dirt or clay, geophagia, which we discussed earlier in a different context, paper, hair, trichophagia, paint chips, laundry starch, chalk, or even feces, coprophagia. It's a range of cravings that would make most people recoil in horror, a profound deviation from normal eating behavior. The causes of pica are complex and often multifaceted. It's frequently linked to nutritional deficiencies, particularly iron deficiency anemia or zinc deficiency. When the body is severely lacking in these vital minerals, It can send out desperate, misguided signals that manifest as cravings for non-food items, as if seeking the missing nutrients in the most unlikely places. But pica can also be associated with mental health conditions, such as obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD, intellectual disabilities, autism spectrum disorder, or even stress and trauma. In some cases, it can be a coping mechanism, a way to self-soothe or deal with overwhelming emotions. It's a condition that truly highlights the intricate, often mysterious connections within the human body and mind. The dangers of pica are significant and can be life-threatening. Consuming non-food items can lead to a host of serious health problems. These include intestinal blockages, which can require emergency surgery, poisoning from toxic substances like lead paint or contaminated soil, parasitic infections from ingesting dirt or feces, and severe dental damage from chewing on hard, abrasive materials. Imagine the silent suffering, the profound embarrassment, and the very real physical harm caused by an uncontrollable craving for things that are fundamentally not meant to be eaten. It's a tragic form of strange eating that is often misunderstood and stigmatized. Unlike the deliberate choices we've explored, pica is not a choice at all. It's a medical condition that requires careful diagnosis and treatment, often involving nutritional supplementation, behavioral therapy, and addressing any underlying mental health issues. It's a genuinely tragic form of strange eating that highlights the complex relationship between body and mind and the profound impact of nutritional and psychological well-being on our most basic human needs. It reminds us that not all strange eating is a matter of culture or adventure. Sometimes it's a desperate cry for help from a body and mind in distress. Ultimately, pica offers a stark contrast to the intentional weirdness we've explored throughout this journey. It's a poignant reminder that while many strange meals are born of human ingenuity, desperation, or curiosity, some are born of profound suffering and illness. So, the next time you encounter someone with unusual eating habits, perhaps approach with empathy and understanding, rather than judgment. Because sometimes the strangest things people eat are not a choice, but a desperate, often dangerous, manifestation of a complex medical condition. And that, my friends, is a truly somber yet important lesson from the grand buffet of human dietary history. All right, my dear connoisseurs of the grotesque, we've reached the end of our gastronomic horror show. You've journeyed through millennia of human culinary absurdity, from the desperate gnawing of prehistoric bone marrow to the squirming horrors of live octopus, from the stomach-churning stench of rotten shark to the ethical quandaries of lab-grown meat. You've witnessed the extreme lengths humanity will go to fill a belly, flaunt a status, or simply shock a dinner guest. Let's have a rapid-fire, sarcastic run-through of the most memorable and horrifying dishes we've encountered. Remember the flamingo tongues of ancient Rome, a vibrant pink insult to common sense? Or the medieval mummy powder, a macabre medicinal snack that probably gave you more plagues than cures? How about the Jamestown famine, where Jane made the ultimate sacrifice for survival? And let's not forget the casu marzu, the maggot-infested cheese that literally jumps off your plate. Or the surströmming, a Swedish delicacy so potent it violates international air travel regulations. We've had radioactive water, boiled leather boots, and even the occasional human breast milk cheese. Truly, a menu for the ages and for the utterly unhinged. So, what does this tell us about humanity, about ourselves, and about the bizarre journey of civilization? It tells us, unequivocally, that we are profoundly adaptable creatures. Given enough hunger, enough ambition, or enough misguided belief, we will find a way to eat almost anything. It tells us that we are vain, eager to display our status and wealth through culinary excess, even if it means slaughtering 100 flamingos for their tongues. It tells us we are occasionally stupid, prone to superstition and unscientific fads that lead to lead-laced cheese and radium water. And it tells us that our culinary curiosity, that relentless drive to explore new flavors and push boundaries, sometimes leads us down truly dark, disturbing, and occasionally fatal paths. What does this all mean for your perfectly normal, probably bland next meal? Well, perhaps a newfound appreciation for its predictability, for its safety, for the fact that it doesn't contain sawdust, lead, or a partially developed duckling. Or perhaps it will simply confirm your suspicion that humanity, left to its own devices, is profoundly, wonderfully, and often disgustingly strange. If you've managed to stay awake through this entire historical buffet of horrors and your stomach hasn't staged a full-blown rebellion, consider subscribing. Or don't. History, much like a rancid piece of hawkar, truly doesn't care about your delicate sensibilities. Either way, I hope you've gained a unique, if unsettling, perspective on the most basic of human needs. Now, go forth and enjoy your perfectly normal, likely bland, utterly un-maggot-infested dinner. And try not to think about the entrails. You're welcome.